Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case full of unexpected twists. The case of Abigail Hernandez. Abigail Hernandez, commonly known as Abby, was born on October 12, 1998, in Manchester, New Hampshire, USA. She was the second child of her parents, Rubens Hernandez and Xenia. The family had a happy life for many years, but eventually her parents decided to divorce. After the divorce, Abigail and her older sister Sarah moved in with their mother, who worked as a nurse. From a young age, Abigail showed many positive traits. Those who knew her described her as kind, curious, cheerful, and adventurous. She first explored the world of robotics and shortly after began learning German. However, Abigail's true passion was hiking. This was not surprising, as she lived in an ideal location for such activities, North Conway and its surrounding areas, which are known as one of the main spots for hiking and rock climbing in the northeastern United States. The beautiful local landscape continues to draw many tourists who enjoy long walks and outdoor activities. Abigail's high school classmates remember her as a special person who could connect with almost anyone. This ability allowed her to form friendships easily. In 2013, after a busy summer, Abigail returned to school and balanced her daily routine with extracurricular activities, which brought her joy. At that time, she was in a relationship with her boyfriend, Jimmy Campbell, and spent most of her free time with him. Overall, Abigail led a typical life in a beautiful and safe area with a low crime rate, which made her and her loved ones feel secure when they went out or returned home. However, everything changed dramatically when a man named Nathaniel entered her life. Nathaniel Kibbe, known as Nate, lived about 50 kilometers from Conway in Gorham, New Hampshire. He was born on July 15, 1980, and little is known about his family or early life. According to some sources, he attended the same school as Abigail, but many years earlier, meaning they never crossed paths within the school walls or outside of it. During his school years, most of Nathaniel's classmates viewed him as very aggressive and cruel. Reports from peers indicated that he kept a list of names of future victims, primarily fellow students. Additionally, Nathaniel often claimed to be part of a gang called the Vipers, and he was generally regarded as someone not to be trifled with. As Nathaniel grew older, he seemed to change on the surface. He got a job at a company that specialized in mechanical processing and manufacturing. People who knew him during this time saw him as disciplined, and his colleagues and supervisors regarded him as an exemplary employee. However, they were unaware of his dark past. Previously, Nathaniel had attempted to abduct a 16-year-old girl who was trying to get on a school bus. He also had multiple encounters with law enforcement due to banned substance possession. Furthermore, he was involved in various firearm-related incidents and was often caught lying while trying to buy them from specialty shops. This is just a glimpse of his troubling history. Some reports indicate that Nathaniel lived with a 13-year-old girl for several months, claiming she was his girlfriend and openly acknowledging the inappropriate nature of their relationship. In reality, such a relationship between an adult and a minor is a serious crime. Nathaniel's neighbors in the trailer park kept their distance from him. While they didn't see him as an immediate threat, they didn't trust him because of his questionable behavior. On October 9, 2013, Abigail left school and, as usual, went for a walk. Unfortunately, one of her birthday gifts, hiking boots she wanted to wear for her 15th birthday, caused her discomfort. They rubbed against her feet, leading to painful blisters that made walking difficult. Nevertheless, she felt she had no choice but to continue on her way, trying to distract herself from the pain while enjoying the scenery and thoughts about the upcoming holiday. Later, her boyfriend Jimmy texted her again to express his love. Abigail replied with a heart emoji. Abigail's school is not far from home, but her usual walk became long and painful because her feet were chafed. She had to focus on each step, trying to place her feet gently on the ground. So, she felt genuinely frightened when she heard a car approaching. The driver was Nathaniel, who was unusually friendly and welcoming. He offered Abigail a ride, but she politely declined since she didn't know him. However, Nathaniel insisted, noticing that she was clearly uncomfortable. When she explained that her new shoes had caused blisters, he suggested that if she kept walking, her feet would hurt even more, which made Abigail hesitate. He then opened the passenger door of his car, and Abigail reluctantly sat in that position. As Nathaniel started the car, he began asking her various questions. At first, everything seemed fine to Abigail. However, he soon mentioned that he needed to stop at a hardware store to buy a few items for his house. He then drove into the parking lot of a large hardware store and parked in a secluded area away from the entrance. By this point, Abigail was feeling quite nervous, but tried to stay calm and act naturally. She even tried to convince Nathaniel that her house was close enough for her to walk, but when he heard this, Nathaniel insisted even more that he would take her home as they had initially agreed. At that moment, tension filled the air as Abigail decided to unbuckle her seatbelt and try to escape the car. However, Nathaniel quickly reacted to her movement in an unexpected way. He grabbed her shirt with one hand and pulled a weapon from the glove compartment with the other, aiming it directly at her. In a matter of seconds, the situation escalated dramatically, and Abigail realized she was in real danger. Nathaniel not only kept the weapon pointed at her, but also threatened to hurt her. Feeling trapped, Abigail understood that she needed to stay calm and comply with him. After a few minutes, Nathaniel placed a large baseball cap on Abigail's head and bound her hands with tourniquets. He then started the car and drove off. At some point, Nathaniel noticed that Abigail was constantly looking towards the road, positioning her head in such a way that the baseball cap was not limiting. This angered him, and he used a stun weapon on her, causing her to lose consciousness. When Abigail regained her senses, she found herself in a dark, small room without windows. The only thing she could see was a poster on the wall featuring a snake with the words, "Don't step on me." A few minutes later, Nathaniel blindfolded her with tape, tied her hands with plastic straps, and placed a motorcycle helmet on her head. Once he ensured she was completely immobilized and helpless, he removed her clothes and coerced her into intimacy for the first time. From that day on, Nathaniel held the girl captive, indulging in his worst instincts and subjecting her to various forms of abuse. He also threatened to harm her family and friends if she attempted to escape or tell anyone about her situation. Typically, Abigail returned home after dinner, but when 7:00 p.m. arrived and she was still absent, her mother became very concerned. She asked her eldest daughter, Sarah, if Abigail had mentioned any plans to go out. Unfortunately, Sarah had no information to provide. Xenia then tried to call her daughter, but it seemed Abigail's phone was turned off. Given these circumstances, Xenia felt compelled to contact the police to report her daughter missing. Immediately, law enforcement officials used the existing missing child search protocol. Meanwhile, Xenia and Sarah contacted several of Abigail's friends in the hope that one of them might know where she was. However, none of these measures produced the desired results. There was no one who could give them any information that would help them find her, and Nathaniel was the only person who knew where she was. In addition, Nathaniel understood perfectly well that any mobile phone could be tracked, so he almost immediately smashed Abigail's phone. Thus, the local authorities and her relatives were desperately searching for her, while she was in Nathaniel's power. When Nathaniel spent time with the victim, he tried to turn on the music at full volume so that no one would hear her screams. In fact, the acts of physical aggression from Nathaniel were quite common. Nathaniel used all sorts of tactics to intimidate Abigail in order to keep her under his control. For example, The aggressor constantly told her that if she behaved well, he would not cause her much harm. Along with this, he affirmed that without any hesitation, he would take her life and also her family if the situation required it. So Abigail could only pray. She repeated to herself over and over again that she needed to calm down and try to analyze her situation. She focused on one goal. She needed to do everything possible to save her life. She believed the best strategy might be to get closer to her kidnapper. Enduring bullying from him, Abigail tried to lower his guard. Whenever she could, she spoke to him calmly, insisting that she didn't judge his actions. She also mentioned that everyone makes mistakes and promised to keep quiet about the incident if he set her free. However, all her attempts to get closer to Nathaniel were completely unsuccessful. It seemed that the man was even becoming more cruel than before. The room where Nathaniel kept Abigail was nearly soundproof, resembling a modernized cargo container. There were no windows, making it impossible for her to connect with the outside world. To further isolate her, Nathaniel put up a sign on the front door that read, "Strangers, entry is prohibited." While this seemed odd to his neighbors, they didn't pay much attention, as Nathaniel had always been considered peculiar, and it was his property. During her time with Abigail, he indulged in his disturbing desires, subjecting she to various forms of physical and psychological manipulation. Despite her dire situation, Abigail held on to hope that she would eventually escape this nightmare. She remained determined and focused on a strategy to soften her captor. Gradually, she made some progress. At one point, Nathaniel even allowed her to stay in his trailer, marking a shift in their relationship. Meanwhile, in Conway, posters about Abigail's disappearance were plastered everywhere. Although, despite the local authorities' efforts, they found no specific leads to help locate her. The search for Abigail proved to be extremely challenging. Her disappearance sparked significant public concern, and many people have been closely following the developments of this case. Abigail's relatives were at a loss about what to do next. Although they remained determined to find her, their hope was slowly diminishing. Nathaniel and Abigail also were closely following the news about the case, as it was frequently covered on television, which kept her hope for rescue alive. However, Nathaniel began to feel increasingly uneasy as time passed. Posters with Abigail's image only multiplied in the media, which regularly showed her data, including both a description of her appearance and contact numbers to call in case of any information related to the case. The search for Abigail had become one of the largest in New Hampshire's history. Meanwhile, she continued to endure her worst nightmare. While her search became more intense, the authorities still could not find anything worthwhile to direct their efforts in the right direction. They had already questioned Jimmy, thinking he might have information about her disappearance. However, Jimmy cooperated with the police and confirmed his alibi. A month had passed since Abigail went missing. Her mother was beginning to lose hope. She hadn't checked her mailbox in weeks, but when Xenia sorted through the accumulated letters, she found one from her daughter. Dated October 22, 2013, the letter read approximately, "Dear Mom, I miss you and love you more than you can imagine. I'm sorry about everything that's happened. I've seen the news reports. To answer your questions, I want you to know that I am alive, well, and safe. Even though I miss you dearly, I can't share my location right now. Please stay strong for me, as I am staying strong for you. I've realized that patience, hope, and courage can make a difference. Don't lose hope. Keep moving forward, and remember me. I believe everything will work out for us. I love you. Please give Sarah a hug for me, and tell her I love and miss her very much." Dreams come true. The authorities analyzed this letter, trying to find at least some clue that could lead them to Abigail. Unfortunately, they found nothing useful. They only managed to confirm that this letter was indeed written by Abigail. At least they were completely sure that it was her handwriting. but none of them suspected that this letter was Nathaniel's idea. He thought that it could stop the search or slow down the investigation. In fact, this was not the first letter Abigail had written. She had previously crafted another letter and managed to create a secret message by pressing her nails into the paper. This hidden message contained words asking for help, but they were not easily visible. Nathaniel somehow discovered Abigail's attempt to communicate and punished her severely for it. Then he forced her to write the very letter that Xenia eventually received. For a long time, the letter's contents were kept secret, but many news outlets began to spread rumors that Abigail had willingly run away from home because she might be pregnant. Consequently, almost everyone in the city, including Abigail's classmates, discussed the escape. Abigail's best friend later expressed her outrage at this theory. She believed with certainty that her friend was not expecting a child, and felt that Abigail was not the type to shy away from tough situations. Both Abigail's family and the investigators were convinced that she was in serious danger. 6 weeks after her daughter's disappearance, Xenia spoke to journalists, hoping to inspire her daughter with positivity. She firmly believed that Abigail was alive and thought she might see her on television. "I know that hope is stronger than fear. I hope one day you can reach out to me. I feel your presence in my life every day, and I wish for your safe return home as soon as possible." Unfortunately, days turned into weeks and weeks into a month, with law enforcement still no closer to solving the case. However, they did gather enough evidence to conclude that Abigail was being held against her will. Meanwhile, the relationship between Abigail and Nathaniel was growing stronger. Although it took some time, Abigail managed to earn Nathaniel's trust. He even involved her in one of his illegal activities, working on counterfeit banknotes. Despite this, Abigail was still subjected to physical abuse and insults. Months passed, and the investigation yielded no significant leads. Xenia and Sarah continued to feel sadness and despair. At Nathaniel's house, life continued normally. Despite spending a long time captive, Abigail never discovered the true identity of her captor. She called him by a simple word: the owner. Nathaniel often surprised her with his unpredictable behavior and emotional shifts. Recently, their interactions had included more calm moments, leading Abigail to believe that he might not be as cruel as he once appeared. However, this perception changed dramatically when Nathaniel placed a makeshift collar around Abigail's neck and activated it, sending a strong electric shock through her weakened body. When she regained consciousness, Nathaniel warned her that he would take action if she attempted to escape. By mid-January 2014, Abigail had been held captive for over 6 months. Perhaps her relationship with Nathaniel remained the same as before. Undoubtedly, there was a certain connection between them. However, she was still at a disadvantage, and Nathaniel tried to keep his cool. At this time, some progress was made. For instance, Nathaniel allowed Abigail to read and even gave her several books, which may have been his first mistake. One of the cookbooks at Nathaniel's house had his name on it, and Abigail noticed this. When she addressed him by name, Nathaniel was genuinely surprised and asked how she knew it. Abigail truthfully replied that she saw his name on the book's cover. Being honest was part of her strategy to build a connection with her kidnapper. She hoped that one day Nathaniel would decide to let her go, or someone would simply find her. Abigail has been locked in a soundproof box for very long, and now she is closer to freedom than ever. So interesting. Her potential rescue was not due to her actions, but rather because Nathaniel had been involved in a minor traffic accident. Realizing that it was only a matter of time before the authorities showed up at his door, he decided to call the nearest police station and offered to cooperate. As a result, law enforcement arrived at his home and discovered a large stash of firearms of various calibers. In this situation, Nathaniel willingly surrendered the weapons to the authorities. He allowed the police to search his trailer multiple times. Again and again, police officers went in and out, passing only a few meters from the container in which Abigail was located, but because of his cooperative behavior, she remained captive. Despite Abigail being missing for a long time, her family and the authorities continued to search for her, hoping she was still alive. Nathaniel seemed unfazed by the situation. He would leave his house during the day and return in the evening, without worrying that Abigail might attempt to escape. However, some of Nathaniel's actions changed the situation. He met a woman, and they eventually became intimate. During their conversation, she revealed that she was struggling financially and couldn't afford her rent. Nathaniel decided to help her by giving her some money. Later, while shopping at a supermarket, and it should be said that she was genuinely surprised when the cashier told her that her $50 were counterfeit. She had to abandon her items at the checkout and leave the store quickly. After returning home, she called Nathaniel and took out her frustration on him. She also advised him to dispose of all the counterfeit money he had at home, since the police were expected to visit him soon. Of course, she had no idea her call would have significant consequences for Abigail. When their conversation ended, Nathaniel went into a panic and decided he needed to eliminate anything that could lead to his arrest. Most of all, more than the potential charges of counterfeiting, he was primarily anxious about possible accusations related to Abigail's kidnapping and regular crimes against her personal safety. So, on July 20, 2014, fearing he would be caught, Nathaniel returned almost all of Abigail's belongings. He then placed her in the passenger seat of his car and put the same baseball cap on her that she had worn on the day of her kidnapping. After that, Nathaniel started the car, and they drove together for several hours. Eventually, he stopped and ordered Abigail to get out. He threatened her one last time that he would come back for her, cause pain and suffering to her loved ones if she told anyone about what happened to her or reported him to the police. This is how Abigail found freedom. Later, Abigail reflected that she couldn't tell if what she was experiencing was a dream or reality. However, once she regained her senses, she began walking towards a house. Along the road, she for a long time couldn't believe that she was free. After enduring 9 months of confinement and trauma, she was finally able to return home. As walking to her house, she heard the familiar voice of her mother, who was talking to someone on the phone. When Abigail stepped inside and shouted "Mom," Xenia was overwhelmed with disbelief at hearing her daughter's voice again after so many months. She even asked for confirmation, trying to ensure it was really her. Later that evening, Xenia urged Abigail to share everything that had happened to her. Threats from Nathaniel quite quickly surfaced in her memory. She constantly avoided details about the identity of her kidnapper. After discussing the situation, Xenia and Abigail decided to contact the police. However, during the police interview, Abigail once again withheld information about her kidnapper, fearing he might return and harm her family. After the police questioned Abigail, the news of her release from captivity gradually spread throughout the area. When Abigail returned home from the police station, she took a bath and then lay down in her own bed. It still felt like a dream, but the horrifying memories brought her back to reality. In that moment, she felt exhausted, and for the first time in a long while, Abigail was able to truly relax, feeling safe. The next day was equally strange for her. On one hand, she wanted to return to her normal life and engage in her favorite activities. On the other hand, she was still plagued by fear and anxiety at the thought of Nathaniel possibly reappearing in her life. The following days passed in a similar manner, and Abigail sensed that her sense of freedom was not yet complete. Perhaps that is why on July 27, 2014, she could not stand it and confessed to her mother that she had deliberately hidden all the information about the man who had kidnapped her. She suggested that they should speak to the police again, which they did. The officers welcomed Abigail's new statement, which proved crucial for the investigation. After Abigail shared everything she knew about Nathaniel, the authorities began preparing an operation to capture him quickly. The following day, the police arrived at Nathaniel's home, surrounded his trailer, and ordered him to surrender. Surprisingly, Nathaniel did not resist arrest. After his arrest, Nathaniel was taken to the police station for questioning. Meanwhile, a thorough search was conducted at his residence, and the police officers did not leave any corner unattended, collecting all the evidence that was of even the slightest relate to the investigation. During the interrogation, Nathaniel requested a lawyer and denied any involvement in the charges against him. The preliminary hearing on this case took place the very next day after the arrest, and in the days that followed, Nathaniel appeared in court multiple times to review the evidence presented by the prosecution. By this point, there was no doubt that he was responsible for the horrific events in Abigail's life. On August 12, 2014, Nathaniel's lawyers filed a motion for his release in court, and unexpectedly, the judge in Kona approved it. However, Nathaniel was prohibited from contacting the victim, Abigail, or her family. He had to stay at least 100 meters away from them. The main trial began in mid-December 2014, with Abigail and her family sitting in the front row at the prosecutor's table, closely observing the defense's arguments. At that time, Nathaniel was being held at the Carroll County Correctional Facility and faced over 180 charges related to Abigail's case. The next court hearing occurred on May 26, 2016, nearly 2 years after Nathaniel's arrest. By then, he had accepted a plea deal and was prepared to admit his guilt, which aimed to avoid a lengthy trial and provided him with some legal advantages. A particularly emotional moment in the trial came when Abigail delivered her final statement. She shared that she had resumed her studies, social life, and sports activities. Then she turned her gaze to Nathaniel and told him that even though he was a real monster to her, but he would always be a man who simply made the wrong choice. It seemed that Abigail wanted Nathaniel to understand that she forgave him. Continuing her speech, Abigail expressed her deep regret that things had not turned out differently, but she acknowledged that her family's safety was paramount. After all, it wasn't she who sent Nathaniel to prison. Abigail believed that he had put himself in such a position when he decided to keep her captive. All this was his own decision. She concluded her speech by thanking Nathaniel, who had helped her through this ordeal, explaining that the experience had made her appreciate her life and freedom much more. Then she turned to Nathaniel and her mother. Xenia told Nathaniel that despite the fact that part of her soul sincerely hated him, she also wanted to thank him for not harming her daughter's life. After Abigail's words, Nathaniel Kibbe pleaded guilty to 7 felony charges, including kidnapping and abuse. He will serve 45 to 90 years in prison. Meanwhile, Abigail was able to return to a normal life sometime after Nathaniel's trial. A few years later, she moved to a new county, started a family, and had a child. In an interview, she shared that during the 9 months she was held captive, she was determined to survive. She also mentioned that forgiveness played a crucial role in helping her return to a normal life, and she considered it the best form of revenge against her kidnapper. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Chiara Poggi. Chiara Poggi was born in Vigai, Italy, on March 31, 1981. She studied economics and landed a job as a financier at a large company. She was a delicate girl with expressive blue eyes. She was determined to advance her career and become a manager, with the ultimate goal of starting her own business. To achieve this, she focused on her studies and graduated. Alongside her professional ambitions, Chiara also wanted to start a family. At that time, she had been in a relationship with a man named Alberto for 7 years. Unfortunately, all her dreams seemed to stop there, as fate had other plans for her. On August 13, 2007, at approximately 9:12 a.m., Chiara was going about her daily routine when someone knocked on her door. She opened it, unaware that this decision would lead to her death just a few hours later. At 1:50 p.m., Alberto called the Italian Emergency Services, 118, to report a tragedy at his girlfriend's home. Alberto had discovered Chiara's body. He explained that he had visited and found her lying in a pool of blood. When the dispatcher asked if he could help the victim, Alberto said he couldn't bear to look at the scene and had already left to contact the police. He provided the address and implied that his girlfriend was already dead when he called. When asked why he did not wait for the police at the scene, the Alberto explained that the house was located on a dead-end street, making it hard for the police to find. He decided to go to the police himself and bring them to the tragedy scene to prevent confusion. The Carabinieri arrived after being directed by the emergency services dispatcher. All the doors of the house were locked, so the officers had to climb over the fence. Once inside the kitchen, they discovered signs of a struggle. The Chiara seemed to have been attacked while cooking. Dishes were scattered, and there were open boxes containing a knitting needle, which suggested a confrontation might have taken place. The police also found initial evidence of a violent crime. There were drops of blood on the floor. And in the room near the exit, they discovered a potholder and white slippers that were later confirmed to belong to the Chiara. The Carabinieri entered the next room and discovered Chiara lying face down on the steps near the basement entrance. She appeared to have been taken by surprise, as she was still wearing her pink summer pajamas. Chiara showed signs of a severe beating. It seemed she had been struck multiple times with a heavy object, likely a hammer. The police officers quickly spotted important evidence in the pool of blood, a strand of hair that obviously did not belong to Chiara and a distinctive shoe print left in the dried blood. The lack of warmth in the Chiara's body suggested that she had been killed a few hours earlier. The police quickly contacted Chiara's parents. Rita, the mother, was on vacation in Trentino and had missed the call. She called back around 3:30 p.m. and was so distraught by the news that she nearly fainted. She rushed back to the city. When Rita arrived at the police station, her husband, Giuseppe, Chiara's father, was there. Nicola Stassi, Alberto's father, was also there when his son was brought to the station. Alberto called his father for support. Alberto, 20, shared his story of events with the police by the time Chiara's parents arrived. Alberto said he called Chiara at 9:45 a.m., but she did not answer. He was not concerned at first, thinking she might still be asleep. After noon, he made several attempts to contact her on both her cell phone and her home phone, but received no response. At 11:15 a.m., he decided to go play golf. After returning from his match at around 12:30 p.m., Alberto found all of Chiara's doors locked and she was not answering his phone calls. Worried, he climbed over the fence and tried to open the door, but it was locked. He then broke in through the kitchen window, the only way into the house. Inside, he found the TV on. At first, he thought Chiara might still be asleep in her room. However, when he could not find her, he went into the kitchen and saw drops of blood on the dishes. He then went into the living room, where he discovered her body, leaving him in shock. It's strange that he didn't approach Chiara to check on her or try to help. Instead, he ran to get the investigator. At that moment, she was still alive, and she might have been saved. Rather than ensuring his girlfriend was okay or providing first aid, he left the house and headed to the police station. Once in the car, he called for an ambulance. During the police interrogation, they noticed his odd behavior and questioned why he didn't check if the girl was breathing. Instead of helping her, he just ran away and called the police. Alberto explained that he was scared and confused, which led him to call for help right away. However, he could have stayed, called for medics, and waited for the ambulance while performing CPR. He claimed he left because he felt unsafe in the house after the attack and sought protection from police. The Alberto spent the entire day at the police station and around midnight. He was getting ready to meet with the police again to answer their questions. Meanwhile, forensic experts were carefully examining the crime scene and were puzzled by a footprint found in a pool of the Chiara's blood. They asked Alberto to show them his shoes. He was wearing special white golf shoes that were spotless. He claimed he had been wearing them when he arrived at his girlfriend's house. However, this raised suspicions because the floor around the body was covered in blood. How could someone walk around in such a bloody scene without getting any blood on their shoes? There wasn't a single drop of blood on the soles, and the Alberto couldn't provide a clear explanation for this. The police decided to question Alberto about his relationship with Chiara, the murdered girl. Alberto described their relationship as wonderful, claiming they had very few problems. Like any couple, they occasionally argued, but these conflicts were minor and quickly resolved. The police then asked him for more details about the events leading up to her death to help establish a timeline and identify any suspicious activity. However, Alberto offered no significant information. The police took his fingerprints and ultimately released him due to a lack of evidence, keeping him at the police station for just under a day. Finally, around 7 a.m., Alberto got into his father's car and went home. On August 17th, when police examined the search history and files on Alberto's computer, he claimed he woke up early that morning, around 9 a.m., and was working on his thesis while trying to call his girlfriend, after which he went to play golf. Evidence confirmed that he was home, fed his dog, and then left the house. Although it seemed that Alberto had an alibi, the police remained suspicious. The police continued their investigation to reconstruct the timeline of the attack. They were particularly focused on how the crime occurred and still needed to identify the murder weapon. Based on the condition of the Chiara's body, it appeared the attacker used a metal object, possibly something like a hammer with a pointed end or an ice pick. At that point, the forensic report indicated that Chiara was likely murdered between 9 and 10 in the morning. When the police examined the prime Alberto's mobile phone records, they discovered that his mother called him daily just before 10 a.m. Elizabeth, the mother, confirmed that she spoke to her son that day to check on a friend, seemingly validating his alibi and suggesting he could not have committed the murder during that time. However, upon further investigation of the call logs, the police found that the mother did not call her son that day, raising suspicions. Alberto's motives are unclear. Friends confirmed that Chiara and Alberto had a wonderful relationship, with only minor disagreements that are typical of any young couple. A friend named Marco saw Alberto the day after the tragic event and noticed that Alberto seemed distressed. He refused to eat and spoke very little, often expressing his deep sadness over Chiara's death. Meanwhile, the investigation was progressing. The police had gathered preliminary investigation materials, autopsy reports, and numerous witness testimonies about the couple. After August 20th, forensic experts continued analyzing the evidence, including hair found in a pool of blood that did not belong to the Chiara. They also examined materials collected from under Chiara's fingernails. Additionally, several blood splatters were discovered in the house that did not seem to match Chiara's, suggesting they might belong to the assailant. On the morning of August 22nd, Alberto visited the police station to obtain some documents. He spent a few hours speaking with the police, who were hoping to gather new information from him. Additionally, at 2 p.m., Alberto was scheduled to take part in an interrogation with the prosecutor present. With police showing increased interest, the Alberto was preparing for his meeting with his lawyer. By this time, Alberto had already spent over 26 hours at the station, providing the police with all the information they requested. He repeated his account of the events from August 13th. But the police were more focused on the evening of the 12th, the night before the bloody massacre took place. That night, the couple ordered 2 pizzas from a nearby restaurant and spent the evening eating and watching TV. Alberto then went home. Police scrutinized every detail of his statement for any inconsistencies, especially questioning why Alberto left after dinner. Throughout the investigation, Alberto repeatedly maintained that he had nothing to do with his girlfriend Chiara's death. The prosecution remained skeptical. He questions why there was no blood on Alberto's white sneakers as he moved around the house. Was he really that cautious? Why did Alberto leave on the night of the 12th instead of staying with Chiara? And why did he not help her when he found her unconscious? Unexpectedly, Chiara's neighbor provided some information. At around 9 a.m., she noticed a bicycle parked near the entrance to Chiara's house. As a cyclist, she found this strange, as she had never seen Chiara or Alberto riding such a bicycle. Later, the bicycle was spotted near Chiara's fence. The neighbor, who was knowledgeable about bicycles, realized that it was a women's model equipped with unusual accessories not usually found on regular bicycles. The woman did not think about what would happen next. She looked out her window around 10 o'clock or 10:30 a.m. and noticed that the vehicle was no longer by the neighbor's fence. This information caught the police's attention, as it might be an important clue. The police realized that finding this bike could significantly advance their investigation, as locating the owner might lead them to the killer. However, their search for this type of bike hit a dead end because the description provided was too vague. Later, another neighbor, a 47-year-old woman, contacted the police. She reported seeing a bike near Chiara's house at 9:30 a.m. and confirmed it was a women's model with a new color, although some details did not match. It's possible that one of the neighbors had remembered those details incorrectly. Meanwhile, over several days, several lawyers defended Alberto, including his brothers, Giulio and Giuseppe Colli, who worked in the Vi Giovanna Bar Association. However, by this time, the police had discovered the complicated love story between Chiara and Alberto. The love between the Chiara and Alberto was genuine, and their relationship was going well. This was evident to those who knew them and was reflected in their frequent exchanges of affectionate messages. They hardly ever argued, and when they did, the disagreements were minor and quickly resolved. However, in the week leading up to the incident, some unusual changes were observed in their relationship. It seems that Chiara has recently stopped wanting to see Alberto, and they have started sleeping in separate rooms even when he stays overnight. Alberto attributes this behavior to the fact that he prefers to sleep in a double bed in Chiara's brother's room, where he finds it more comfortable. There were very few photographs of the couple together, raising concerns about their relationship. Instead, the Alberto's secret folder contained hundreds of photos of women's feet in shoes, leading to suspicions that the couple's seemingly happy exterior was hiding deeper issues. This raised the question, could Alberto's unusual fetish have been connected to the murder? The case took a dramatic turn 43 days after Chiara's death, when police discovered Alberto's sister's bicycle, matching a neighbor's description. Blood was found on the pedals, which was later confirmed through laboratory testing to be Chiara's. However, Alberto's sister had a solid alibi, as she was at work at the time of the incident. Initially, Alberto was believed to have borrowed his sister's bicycle. The family and the community were shocked. They did not believe Chiara's boyfriend was guilty until the very end. However, when traces of her DNA were found on the pedals of the bike, they had no choice but to accept his guilt. Relatives were also shocked by Alberto's behavior. He met with them several times after the tragedy and still steadfastly maintained his innocence. The parents displayed clear signs of their grief. The lawyer passionately defended his client, trying to explain the presence of the Chiara's blood on the pedals, despite the significant amount found, which was not just a few drops. The defense attempted to dismiss this evidence by suggesting it could be related to menstruation and other implausible theories. Ultimately, despite these efforts, Alberto was arrested. On September 28, the judge reviewed the case file and determined that there was not enough evidence against the suspect, leading to Alberto's immediate release from prison. The case file was then sent back to the prosecution for further examination. Police had found a significant amount of specific pornographic material on the Alberto's computer. They believed that his girlfriend might have discovered his secret fetish, which could have caused tension between them. A conflict arose, and this seems plausible considering that on August 12, the day before the incident, the Alberto had been working on his laptop at Chiara's place and had left it there, giving her access to the stored information. Alberto had many photographs of women's shoes that he seemed to have taken himself, particularly during a recent trip to London shortly before his relationship with Chiara started to decline. Additionally, there were images capturing private moments between the Chiara and Alberto. These photos were blurred, but the girl appeared to be quite embarrassed in them. It's possible that the Alberto's specific preferences in intimacy contributed to their disagreements. Alberto acknowledged that he has certain fetishes, but he claimed that the Chiara always accepted, and it never caused any issues between them. On November 3, 2008, Alberto was charged once more. Police believed they had sufficient evidence to link him to Chiara's murder. It was clear that the Alberto knew the victim well, as he had unrestricted access to her home. This was supported by the fact that nothing was broken or stolen, and the Chiara was found wearing her home clothes. The strongest evidence was a footprint found in the Chiara's blood. It was a size 42 shoe print that matched the Alberto's foot size. After committing the crime, Alberto replaced his old shoes with a brand new pair that he wore during his first interrogation. Despite blood prints being found on the bicycle pedals, he persisted in denying any involvement. It seems he successfully disposed of the sneakers he wore when he left the Chiara's house after the murder. On February 24, 2009, during the preliminary hearing, the prosecution requested a 30-year prison sentence. Although they had initially requested a life sentence, after reviewing the case documents, the judge determined that further improvements were needed. He identified many of the evidence as being implausible. Extensive research was conducted, including a reconstruction of the events using computer models. A comprehensive model of Chiara's house was built, allowing the police to track the killer's movements. On August 13, 2009, a detailed report was submitted to the court. According to this report, the Alberto turned on his computer at 9:35 a.m. and viewed several pornographic photographs. He continued this activity until 12:20 p.m. and identified only 3 possible time intervals during which the murder could have occurred. The house alarm was deactivated at 9:12 a.m., and there is no information about Alberto's activities between then and 9:35 a.m. The second time window for the murder was from 12:20 p.m. to 12:46 p.m., as the Alberto called Chiara's mobile phone from his home shortly after 12:46 p.m. There was also a time frame available for the murder from 12:46 p.m. to 1:26 p.m. The forensic expert determined that the Chiara likely died between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning, suggesting that the earlier time frame was more plausible. Meanwhile, the defense pointed out several mistakes made by the police during the investigation. The forensic expert noted that evidence was mishandled. There were numerous errors and inconsistencies, including the failure to collect the Chiara's fingerprints. Police also did not investigate other people who may have used the bicycle seen near Chiara's house, which weakened the prosecution's case. Additionally, the provisional time frame established suggests that Alberto had no more than 23 minutes to commit the crime, set up the scene, escape, and dispose of the shoes. Alberto lived a mile from Chiara's house, and if he had been able to ride his bicycle to Chiara's house, it would have been physically difficult and inconsistent with the timeline of events. Despite this, the prosecution believed he could have done so. On December 17, the judge left the courtroom to consider his verdict. The prosecution asked for a 30-year prison sentence. However, they failed to present convincing evidence of his guilt. There were no bloody shoes, video footage, witness testimony, or obvious motives linking Alberto to the murder. Ultimately, the judge found Alberto not guilty. The verdict shocked the local community, which had expected a different outcome and labeled Alberto a murderer. However, the case did not end there. Chiara's family filed an appeal on November 8, 2011, leading to a new trial. This hearing lasted several weeks, during which the public and media were barred from the courtroom, allowing journalists only to enter when the decision was announced. The court acquitted the Alberto Stasi once more during a retrial on April 18, 2013. The lawyer emphasized that the charges lacked grounding and that there was insufficient evidence. He also argued that it would have been impossible for Alberto to commit the murder and cover up the evidence in just 23 minutes. Following the death of Alberto's father, who was killed in a Pavia hospital on April 9, 2014, a new phase in the investigation began. This phase included various pieces of evidence, such as computer modeling and a thorough analysis of a bicycle found in the Alberto's home. Unexpectedly, during this investigation, Alberto confessed to murdering Chiara. The case was so complex that without this confession, he likely would have been acquitted again. However, under public pressure, he ultimately admitted his guilt. On December 17, 2014, 37-year-old Alberto Stasi received a 16-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay €1 million in compensation to the Chiara's family. Again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Marie Robards. Stephen Robards and Beth Burrows grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. Stephen, whose father owned a small insurance agency, was a well-known figure at school. Beth, a talented athlete in track and field, volleyball, and basketball. Stephen and Beth fell in love in high school and married in 1972. When Beth turned 18, shortly after her boyfriend signed a 4-year contract to serve in the Navy on July 10, they welcomed daughter, Marie, that same year. Because of Stephen's military service, the family moved frequently between different naval bases. This lifestyle was challenging for Beth. After Stephen completed his service, they returned to Fort Worth. Beth often criticized her husband and described their relationship as a teenage romance, but over time, the love faded and the daily challenges made things worse. Additionally, Stephen's temper and jealousy added to the strain on their relationship, causing Beth to file for divorce in 1979. Marie Robards, their daughter, was a well-behaved student who excelled in her studies. She played the clarinet in the school orchestra and took art and dance lessons during after-school activities. Because her father was in the military, they moved frequently, which made it challenging for Marie to constantly change schools and friends at first. However, she gradually adjusted and became more open and sociable with her new classmates and teachers. After her parents divorced, Marie and her mother, Beth, relocated to a nearby city, while her father stayed in their previous home. Stephen lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in Fort Worth, and Marie, along with Beth, visited him no more than twice a month. In the 1980s, Beth began a relationship with Frank Rouse, a former Navy officer she met while her husband was stationed in Florida. At first, they were just chatting, but after Beth's divorce, they developed a relationship and decided to live together. After leaving the Navy, Frank became a police officer in a small Texas town about an hour outside of Fort Worth, with a population of about 10,000. Frank had also recently gone through a divorce and had full custody of his son, the same age as Beth's daughter, Marie. In 1981, Beth married Frank, but their marriage soon hit a rough patch. Beth had to work, so she spent little time with her husband and children, making it difficult for them to bond. This problem remained unresolved and became more serious when Marie turned 16. One day, she came home to find Frank in bed with another woman. Marie was furious and told her mother immediately, but instead of ending the relationship, Beth remained calm. During this time, Beth worked in the emergency room at a local hospital, which kept her away from home for long hours. As a result, she rarely saw Frank and did not spend much time with her daughter. Beth did not blame Frank for their distance. Instead, she felt responsible because she believed she should have spent more time with him. However, Marie was frustrated and thought that Frank was not good enough for her mother, urging Beth to divorce him. Beth, on the other hand, wanted to handle her own relationships and asked Marie not to interfere. As she grew older, Marie began to distance herself from her family. She often argued with Frank and pointed out his shortcomings. Eventually, Beth had to choose between Marie and Frank. Marie declared that if Beth did not divorce him, she would leave the house. Beth disagreed with her daughter's wishes. Even though Marie started packing, Beth didn't change her mind. She decided that Marie should stay with her maternal relatives in Fort Worth instead of going to her biological father's house. Beth contacted these relatives, who assisted Marie in enrolling in a new school. Marie moved, but after only 5 days in Fort Worth, she had spent all her money and wanted to return home to her mother. At this time, Frank's son chose to live with his biological mother, but soon became unhappy and wanted to return. However, Frank refused to let him return. Now, Marie was faced with a similar situation, and she was not allowed to return home either. The rule that if someone left home, they could not return, created a lot of tension. Beth felt that Frank was forcing her to choose between him and Marie. Many people supported Frank's stance, believing that children should not have a back-and-forth relationship with their parents, as this led to conflict and problems. Frank was steadfast in his beliefs and wanted to prevent such problems. He thought he was promoting discipline and trying to avoid constant chaos and tension. It is important to note that Frank was a former military man, known for his decisiveness and discipline. Marie had to accept the situation. At this point, she had lost respect for Frank because of his affair, but after recent events, she had come to hate Frank. Marie left Fort Worth and moved into a rented apartment. Meanwhile, Beth tried to convince her husband to let them reunite. She believed that this was just a temporary situation and that Marie would return soon. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, Frank was unyielding and never allowed Marie back. Beth felt trapped in this situation. The strain on their relationship led her to seek help from a psychologist. Marie then decided to move back in with her father, Stephen. Marie's decision to return seemed to stem from desperation. Stephen was happy to have his daughter back. At the time, he was living alone and struggling with depression. He later found work as a mailman and became romantically involved with Sandra Hudgens, who lived in the same apartment complex as him. During this time, they lived in a small, cramped one-room apartment. Marie slept on a cot in the kitchen. Steve realized that his daughter was struggling, so he tried to cheer her up. He took her to the movies and outings regularly. However, Sandra felt that these efforts did not make much of a difference. Marie's academic performance declined, and she frequently called Beth, asking to come home. She missed her mother's love and attention. Marie was unhappy with her father's cooking and cleaning and sometimes cried on the phone, begging to come home. She expressed her dislike of the new school and complained about her father's small living space. Marie is confused as to why her mother favors Frank over her and feels that her mother will not stand up to him. Beth, her mother, explained that she felt helpless because her husband would not let her visit Marie. Marie eventually began to write in her diary about her thoughts of ending her life. When her father found out about this, he was very worried and immediately informed Beth. It turns out Marie exaggerated her emotions to get attention. As the months passed, things stabilized. Marie seemed to be adjusting. Her grades improved significantly. She was able to connect with her classmates and everything seemed to be back to normal. Marie's emotions stabilized as well. She had completely adapted to her new environment. According to Sandra, Marie never had any conflicts with her father, was respectful to him and remained calm. Stephen did his best to support her. However, behind Marie's calm exterior, there was something darker. After 3 years, Marie moved back in with her father. On February 18th, Stephen ordered Mexican food for dinner. After the meal, he planned to attend a church service. About an hour later, Stephen returned to his apartment complex, complaining of severe stomach pain and feeling very unwell. Maria, along with Sandra, went to check on him after hearing that he was unwell. When they arrived, Stephen was in pain, shaking, foaming at the mouth, and having difficulty breathing. The ambulance arrived shortly after, but it was too late. They tried to insert a breathing tube, but his airway had closed. Stephen was rushed to the hospital, but he died on the way. Maria was in shock, staring at her father and trying to hide her emotions from Sandra. She had no idea what had really happened, because Stephen's death was not an accident. Hours after the incident, Frank and Beth learned that Stephen was dead. They had to take Marie home, something she had wanted for a long time. After an autopsy, the medical examiner concluded that Stephen had died of a heart attack, identifying symptoms such as chest pain, nausea, and difficulty breathing. The case seemed straightforward and that Stephen's death was due to a heart attack. He did not perform toxicology tests. Even if they wanted to run those tests, the lab didn't have the equipment needed to detect the poison in Stephen's blood. After the burial, Maria stayed by her father's grave, remaining in shock even after everyone else had left. Following the funeral, her mother Beth approached her, visibly upset, and shared her plans to break up with Frank and move to Panama City, Florida, with Maria. However, Maria began to have difficulty breathing and panic, and it took her a long time to calm down. Beth believed that Maria's grief was due to the death of her father Stephen, unaware of the deeper issues at play. Marie and Beth then moved to Panama City. Beth found a job as a clerk at the Department of Motor Vehicles and enrolled her daughter in school. Things seemed to improve, but Marie continued to struggle with depression. Her mother suspected that this was related to her father's death. Beth blamed herself for what had happened. As a high school senior, Marie saw a psychologist who diagnosed her with major depression. Marie's mother recalled the serious problems Stephen had faced and was concerned that his mental health problems might be affecting Marie. To help Marie cope with her depression, she sought the help of a psychiatrist. Things changed when Frank came to Panama City hoping to reconcile with Beth, believing that he needed to devote more time to their marriage and change his attitude towards raising their children. Surprisingly, Beth forgave her unfaithful husband once again. Marie was surprised by her mother's decision. She expressed her unwillingness to live with Frank, who had been unfaithful to Beth, and said that she missed Texas and wanted to live with her mother without any men. However, Beth decided to move in with Frank. In response, Marie contacted her grandfather, Jim, and asked if she could live with him in Mansfield. The family agreed, and Marie moved in with her grandfather. Marie became an outstanding granddaughter, an excellent student, and very polite. She was deeply engaged in the lives of her family and friends. Marie continued to pursue her passion for art and showed interest in journalism. She was intelligent and attractive, yet she dressed simply and never acted impulsively. She always returned home on time, didn't drink at parties, and avoided dating, even though many boys showed interest in her. Eventually, Marie formed a friendship with one of the most popular girls at school, Stacy. Stacy believed that Marie had gone through something traumatic, though she could not fathom how severe it truly was. In January 1994, Marie and Stacy spent the night together, studying Shakespeare's Hamlet. As Stacy read the part about poisoning, Marie suddenly looked pale and unwell. Concerned, Stacy asked her what was wrong. At first, she thought Marie might be upset about the possibility of pregnancy, but Marie denied it. Stacy then asked Marie if she had crashed her grandfather's car, but she shook her head in response. Stacy joked, "You didn't kill anyone, did you?" Marie became quiet and then asked an unusual question. She wanted to know how her friend felt about such events happening in real life. Stacy paused to think. Marie attempted to stand up from the couch but quickly collapsed back in tears, confessing that she had poisoned her father. Overwhelmed by her emotions, she could no longer contain her guilt. The Marie then recounted the story of the murder. She explained that in early February 1993, during a chemistry class, she had poured a substance from a bottle into a napkin, which she later put in her backpack. That evening, she added a bit of poison to her father's meal, and subsequently she endured a long struggle with guilt over her actions. After Marie confessed, she pleaded with Stacy to keep it a secret. Marie had only shared this information with Stacy. She revealed that she had access to a deadly poison that is nearly impossible to detect. This poison can quickly cause a heart attack, leading to death that appears natural. However, Marie claimed she was unaware of its lethal potential at the time. She only wanted her father to become ill so that her mother would care for her. Stacy eventually told her mother everything, and they were both shocked. The mother contacted the Poison Control Center to inquire if the substance could be fatal. The lab technicians sensed something was off and declined to provide an answer. The mother then hung up the phone. Marie felt lost and unsure of what to do. At first, she kept it a secret. She struggled with her feelings for a long time but eventually convinced herself that it was just a cruel prank. Stacy suggested that Marie talk to a psychologist or a priest to share her feelings. However, things did not improve. In February 1994, on the first anniversary of Stephen's death, Jim took Marie and her friend Stacy out to dinner. As Jim raised a glass in remembrance, both girls burst into tears. For several weeks, Stacy was tormented by feelings of guilt and nightmares until she finally decided to reach out to the school counselor and confided in her friend. Although it sounded strange, her friend took the matter seriously and contacted the police, hoping to find answers. The police lab did not have the necessary equipment to investigate the results, making everything futile. Stacy also began to distance herself from Marie. She wanted to avoid all contact with Marie. Their friendship eventually fell apart. Meanwhile, Marie believed that everything had been forgotten. Unaware that there was an investigation going on. In October 1994, a Fort Worth police officer contacted Stacy, saying that the toxicology results were back. They revealed that Stephen Robards had indeed been poisoned. He had received a dose 250 times higher than the fatal dose, suggesting that it was premeditated murder. Marie was arrested while studying at the University of Texas at Austin, where many people considered her sweet and harmless. She confessed immediately. Marie said that she never intended to kill her father. She just wanted to make him sick so she could reunite with her mother. Unfortunately, she miscalculated the dose and accidentally caused Stephen's death. Many people found it hard to believe that Marie could have done such an act, and some even blamed her mother for the situation. They believed that her mother's abandonment had caused Marie distress. They felt that Marie was not supposed to be with her mother, which caused her to take drastic actions to get her attention. Marie first appeared in court for a preliminary hearing on October 28, 1994, but she was released on bail and placed in the custody of her mother. A major issue now is whether Marie should be treated as a minor or an adult. since she was 17 at the time of poisoning her father and is legally considered a minor. On March 30, 1995, Marie Robards was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. It was decided that she would be tried as an adult. Her mother posted $10,000 bail, allowing Marie to move back in with Frank and Beth while she awaited her trial. She was 19 at the time. Marie's mother used the money Marie received from Stephen's life insurance policy, totaling $60,000, to hire 2 experienced attorneys from Fort Worth. Their defense strategy was based on the argument that Marie wanted her father sick, but did not intend to kill him. Her goal was simply to get back to her mother. The prosecutor's office argued that the actions were motivated by malicious intent, particularly due to the insurance money that Marie received. In this case, the prosecution suggested pressing charges for first-degree murder. Testifying for the prosecution was Marie's best friend, Stacy, who provided details about the emotional state of the Marie. The defense called a psychiatrist to testify, who stated that Marie was not a cold-blooded killer and was merely suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder due to guilt over killing her father. Throughout the hearing, Marie sat silently, often covering her face and crying. Although Marie expressed remorse and expressed her love for her father, the prosecutor claimed that her feelings were not genuine. The prosecution argued that the poisoning showed premeditated murder, arguing that a stomachache alone did not justify returning to her mother. Instead, it implied a desire to kill. At the time, a friend of Marie's mentioned that Marie was considering various ways to reunite with her mother. Marie thought that if she burned down her father's apartment, her mother would come get her. However, no one took Marie seriously. Everyone believed that she was joking. Beth felt guilty about the situation. During the trial, she expressed that if she had left Frank sooner and moved to Florida with Marie, this tragedy could have been avoided. Marie's grandfather, Jim, pleaded for mercy for his granddaughter, asserting that she could not have killed the man she loved. The prosecutor asked for a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 35 years. It is possible that the pleas of family members for a lighter sentence, combined with Marie's emotional expression, influenced the decision. Marie Robards was ultimately sentenced to 28 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 7 years. After the verdict, the lawyers immediately appealed, arguing that the prosecution had presented insufficient evidence about Marie's mental state. However, in 1998, the appeal was denied and she was sent to prison. In a conversation with her mother, Marie expressed that she did not want Stacy to feel guilty about the events that had occurred. Marie believed that Stacy's actions were justified. Marie ultimately served 8 years in prison before being released in 2003. She had since married and changed her name. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Amanda Colley and Lindy Dobbins. On the morning of August 27, 2015, 36-year-old Amanda Colley returned home to find her house in chaos. Someone had broken into her while she was away. Her house was in disarray, with boxes knocked over, trash cans emptied, and many items broken or damaged, with glass strewn everywhere. Amanda panicked and checked her phone, which had many missed calls and messages from her ex-husband that she didn't want to reply to. At 5:30 a.m., she called her boyfriend and the police for help. She had recently started dating a man named Lamar. At that time, Lamar was driving his pickup truck down a route that led to her house. Meanwhile, the police were on their way to the scene. One officer arrived to assess the danger of the situation. He was to talk to Amanda and assess the damage to her property. The police assessed the situation and left after Amanda chose not to file a formal complaint. Before the police left her home around 9 a.m. that morning, someone came to Amanda's aid. The first person to visit was Lindy Dobbins, Amanda's best friend. At 39 and a mother of 3, Lindy had taken the morning off work to be with Amanda and support her. Lindy was a kind person who always helped others in difficult situations. After a while, their mutual friend Rachel Hendricks joined them. She had dropped her kids off at school and decided to support Amanda since she had some free time. By this time, Lamar was already at Amanda's house. The four of them gathered at Amanda's house, watching the chaos and discussing what had happened while considering their next steps. Amanda was still in shock from the incident and realized that she needed to consult a lawyer before reporting her ex-husband, who she believed was responsible. Eventually, Amanda's ex-husband called her again. This time, she chose to answer, leading to a 14-minute conversation. While they were in the living room, they suddenly heard the sound of shattering glass. A few minutes later, a police officer stopped Lamar on the street. He was running frantically, not paying attention to where he was going, trying to escape Amanda's house. According to him, he left the living room as soon as the shooting started, went down to the laundry room, and then fled through the garage, which was partially open. Lamar reported that unexpectedly, gunfire erupted at Amanda's house. He informed the police officer that he thought the shots were fired from outside the house. He did not observe anyone inside being hit by bullets. He was unable to give the police specific details. Lamar is certain that the attacker is targeting him, leading him to believe that the women inside the house are alive. The situation was dire. Minutes after Lamar left the house, the other women tried to escape. Rachel ran through the living room and through the broken glass front door. She spotted the neighbor's house next door and quickly ran over to hide. After escaping, Rachel called 911 to report that she had escaped but had injured her arm. She suspected that an armed attack had occurred at her friend's house and knew exactly who was likely responsible. Realizing the danger, Rachel instinctively ran away when Lamar told them to hide. She was shocked when the gunfire continued. While speaking to the police, Rachel expressed her concern for her friends and urged the police to come quickly to save them. In the next few minutes, 2 more calls came into the police station, one from Amanda and one from her friend Lindy. However, during the calls, they only screamed while the gunshots echoed in the background. The police immediately went to Amanda Colley's house to rescue her. Gunshot wounds to Lindy's arms and legs showed that she was trying to defend herself from her attacker. Unfortunately, her efforts were futile. The attacker had fired a full magazine at her, indicating a clear intention to kill. Lindy was discovered at the end of a long corridor, lying in a pool of blood. It seems she tried to escape, but was killed before she could get away. Rachel stated that just a few seconds before the shooting started, she looked toward the backyard of the house. There, along the garden path, she saw the outline of a man who then pulled out a weapon through the glass door. A group of people stood behind him. The glass was quite thin, preventing her from seeing exactly who was there. The police corroborated her account by analyzing the locations of the bullet holes in the backyard. On the path, they found several unused cartridges, which were identified as deli caliber bullets. Lamar went back to Amanda's house. When the police arrived, he felt assured that they would have the situation under control. Lamar mentioned that he heard gunshots coming from the backyard and believed that he was the perpetrator's target. At that moment, he urged everyone to run. Although he did not see the perpetrator, he suspected that the perpetrator was Amanda's ex-husband, who had spoken to her on the phone just minutes before the attack. Rachel explained that they didn't have enough time to react as quickly as Lamar, so she and Lindy decided to hide in the pantry. She heard Amanda on the other side, probably trying to find a place to hide and possibly running to the bathroom. Seconds later, Rachel heard the front door being broken down. At that moment, the intruder entered the house. He approached the pantry, tried to open the door, and found that it was locked from the inside. The attacker wanted to know where Amanda's boyfriend was. Rachel and Lindy replied that he wasn't there while continuing to hold the door. The intruder then fired through the door, hitting Rachel's arm, causing her to lose her balance. Linda's leg was now injured, causing her to scream in pain. Amanda was also injured but still alive and screaming near the bathroom. In that brief moment, Rachel jumped up and ran from the house. According to Rachel, the attacker could have been Amanda's ex-husband, James Terry Colley. She recognized his familiar voice behind the door. A few minutes later, James's father called the police to report that his son had just confessed to him that he had caught his wife with a friend. At that point, the police arrived at the house. After the attack, James fled the scene. K-9 units were deployed to locate James. They followed James's scent to a nearby street. During the search, a cell phone was found, which was likely left behind by James. Unfortunately, the police were unable to identify the vehicle in which he drove away. He had disappeared from the scene of the crime. The area was searched with specially trained dogs and helicopters, but these efforts yielded no results. Despite an extensive search that lasted several hours, James remained at large, posing a threat to public safety. Fortunately, police arrested James later that evening while he was driving his sister's car. During a search of the car, police discovered a shotgun and 2 Delroy and PGO caliber handguns in the passenger seat, along with a large amount of ammunition. A subsequent examination of the gun confirmed that the bullets matched those found at the crime scene and in Amanda and Lindy's bodies. In addition, glass fragments identical to those found in Amanda's home were discovered. After his arrest, James refused to cooperate with the investigation, claiming that he could not recall anything from the time of the tragic events. Further investigation revealed that James and Amanda had been married for over 8 years and had 2 children. Their relationship then began to deteriorate, leading to their divorce. James moved to his sister's house, 20 km away from their family home, where Amanda and the children continued to live. As the divorce proceedings progressed over the following months, they encountered many difficulties regarding child custody and property division. The two then decided to start new chapters in their lives. James began dating a co-worker named Emmy, while Amanda pursued a relationship with Lamar, another co-worker from the sporting goods company. Even though the couple's relationship had completely broken down, James was still possessive of his ex-wife Amanda. He suspected that she was seeing someone new and called her several times to find out who it was. Amanda did not share the truth because she feared it would lead to serious problems. As a result, James became increasingly angry and aggressive. He called her frequently, becoming so intrusive that Amanda felt compelled to go to court to get a restraining order to protect herself. The weekend before the attack, Amanda's neighbor and close friend took a photo of a man mowing the lawn in front of Amanda's house. The man was identified as her new boyfriend, Lamar. When James found out, he tried to contact Amanda, insulting her and demanding to know who she was seeing. Amanda lied, claiming that the man in the photo was just a landscaper. James was going crazy because Amanda had found someone new. Early on the morning of August 27, he planned a terrible act. Surveillance cameras from nearby homes did not capture the moment James, her ex-husband, entered Amanda's house. This was not surprising, since he had lived there for a long time and was familiar with the areas not covered by the cameras. He approached the house undetected from the backyard, just as he had intended. The James entered the house around 3 a.m., but found it empty. Frustrated, he started to create chaos, throwing items around and dumping trash from the kitchen bins. He broke the TV and damaged several costly appliances. This destruction seemed aimed at upsetting Amanda. As he caused this damage, he was also getting ready for the terrible actions that were to come. James was looking for evidence that Amanda was having an affair with another man. Eventually, he discovered something that confirmed his suspicions and made him even angrier. At 4:00 a.m., he went to Mike's house, who lived across the street. James knocked loudly, shouted and swore, while discussing Amanda in an angry tone. Mike showed James everything he had found in Amanda's house, including some intimate toys that James had never seen before with his ex-wife. Mike knew that James had been given a restraining order prohibiting him from having access to his home or his ex-wife. However, James had violated the order. This could have resulted in a court hearing and possible arrest. Mike tried to calm James down by offering him a drink and suggesting that he go home and rest to avoid making any more impulsive decisions. Unfortunately, James ignored this advice and decided to go to court to resolve the issues related to his first restraining order violation. On the way, he called his father to tell him about the damage he had done to Amanda's home. His father reprimanded him and urged him not to be stupid again. James was arrested and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, robbery, and aggravated stalking for violating a court order. James maintained his innocence, claiming amnesia, and was taken to the county jail to await a hearing. The prosecution needed to prove that James attacked Amanda, her friends, and Lamar. Although there was no direct evidence linking him to the crimes, there were multiple witnesses present who confirmed that he was the perpetrator. Police pieced together James's movements on the day of the attack. James arrived at Mike's house around 4:00 a.m. and stayed with Mike until 4:45 a.m. After leaving, James went to his sister's house, where he lived with his sister and father, about 15 minutes from James's old home. After returning to his sister's house, he retrieved a gun and ammunition before committing the crime. Prosecutors allege that the motive for the attack was a photo he had taken of Lamar at Amanda's house. Police searched James's cell phone and computer. They learned that at approximately 5:00 a.m., he began texting Amanda. He had tried to call her just 1 minute before the first gunshots and had called Amanda 22 times before that. Up until that point, Amanda had tried to avoid answering his calls, but after seeing the state of her house, she decided to pick up the phone. During the call, she accused James of robbing and vandalizing her house. Amanda had asked James to leave her alone. It was clear that she had done everything she could to avoid contact with James. She even suggested that she would keep quiet about his vandalizing her house if he would finally leave her life. The defense team is determined to fight the charges. They argue that James was prescribed medication to treat anxiety and depression, which was supposed to help him but when taken together caused unpredictable side effects. This reaction was made worse the night before the attack, especially after he had consumed beer and strong drinks. On the evening of August 26, after returning home, he took another medication that was supposed to help him sleep. He fell asleep but woke up a few hours later. The defense argued that the combination of the drugs he had taken and the alcohol had contributed to his uncontrollable behavior. However, James had plenty of time before the incident. The effects of these substances should have diminished, and he even attended the trial that morning without arousing any suspicion. After leaving the courthouse, he began calling and texting Amanda. Before arriving at his wife's house, he filled up his car with gas. The prosecutor's office believes this is a sign that he was preparing to flee the state, suggesting that he had planned ahead. During a search of the car, police found a shotgun, 2 handguns, and a large amount of ammunition of various calibers. These items were scattered throughout the vehicle, indicating that they had been hastily discarded. Police also found the same drugs that the defense had mentioned. The attorneys prepared expert witnesses in pharmacology and psychiatry to demonstrate that the combination of drugs James was taking could impair his ability to think rationally and make decisions. According to the attorneys, this impairment ruled out premeditated culpability, suggesting that James's actions could have been a spontaneous outburst of aggression beyond his control. The pharmacologist stated that the combination of these drugs was likely to cause amnesia. Therefore, James may not actually remember the incident. During police questioning, Mike provided detailed evidence of James coming to his house that morning. James was a bit strange. Mike knew that James was trying to cope with Amanda's new relationship after their divorce. Mike could not understand why James still wanted to possess her even though they were divorced. James became obsessed and sent pictures of Amanda's new boyfriend to her, which led to a tragic outcome. Police carefully examined text messages exchanged between James and Mike. It appeared that Mike was telling the truth. James harbored resentment not only toward his ex-wife, but also toward her friends. He specifically blamed Amanda's best friend, Lindy, for turning Amanda against him, which fueled his hatred for her. Evidence showed that James had collected a weapon just before leaving the house, the prosecutor's office said. Police also noted that James' father had tried to intervene and stop him from doing so, but his efforts were unsuccessful. The key witness for the defense was James's sister, Rhonda, who lived with him at the time. However, she was on vacation in Italy during the attack and returned 2 weeks later. Rhonda disputed the prosecutor's assertion that James was planning the attack. She believed that the 2 guns found in the car were there by chance, as she had been carrying them for a while. The defense argued that this indicated the attack was impulsive and unintentional. In contrast, the prosecution thought Rhonda was merely trying to defend younger brother, with whom she had always had a close relationship. The prosecution pointed out inconsistencies in Rhonda's testimony, especially regarding the type of handgun she reported having in the car. This raised the jury's suspicions. James faced the possibility of the death penalty for the assault. James's defense team aimed to reduce the severity of the sentence. The only sure way to spare James's life was to contest the premeditated murder charges, which could have carried a sentence of life in prison without parole. However, the prosecution was determined not to negotiate and refused to offer a plea deal. They argued that James, who had taken 2 lives and seriously injured 2 others, deserved the death penalty. The defense argued that James had no intention of harming Amanda or her friends. However, when he arrived at Amanda's home, an incident occurred that angered him. It is believed that there was an argument between the men, which may have caused James to start shooting. However, surviving witnesses, Rachel and Lamar, claimed that no conversation occurred and that no one provoked him. On the other hand, the prosecution argued strongly that James did not arrive at the home by accident. Instead, he returned to his sister's home to get weapons and ammunition for the murder, suggesting that his actions were premeditated. The key piece of evidence in the case was a phone call between James and Amanda that took place shortly before the shooting began. This call was played to the jury in court and lasted 14 minutes. During the conversation, Amanda attempted to end her relationship with James. She cried and begged him, trying to intimidate him by mentioning the restraining order and threatening to call the police if he continued to stalk her. It was clear that she had been enduring his harassment for a long time, but he paid no attention to her suffering. After both sides presented their arguments, the jury began deliberating their verdict. 2 hours later, they reached a unanimous decision, finding James Terry Colley, 38, guilty on all 7 counts, including burglary. However, the case was not over. 2 weeks later, the same jury reconvened to decide whether James should receive the death penalty. The defense team remained hopeful. They wanted to prove that the combination of drugs he had been taking could have caused side effects, such as memory loss. Experts, including a forensic psychiatrist and a pharmacist, supported this claim, arguing that James suffered from parasomnias, which meant he could not have been aware and could not remember the events that had occurred. Psychiatrists claim that people with parasomnias can walk, drive, and perform deliberate actions. However, the prosecutor's office has disputed these claims by presenting court records showing that James had been in court the morning before the attack. He had interacted with several people and there was no unusual behavior. James appeared calm, with no signs of slowing down, confusion, or depression, common signs of people with parasomnias. The prosecution successfully convinced the jury of James's guilt for causing the deaths of Amanda and Lindy. The jury unanimously decided that he should receive the death penalty. A third hearing then took place, where the court gave the defense one last chance to present any compelling evidence that might lead to a reduction in the death sentence. During this hearing, James took the stand for himself for the first time, describing the incident as a terrible accident. However, his argument lacked credibility. The defense attorneys also failed to present any substantial evidence, leading to James Terry Colley's death sentence being upheld. He is currently in prison, awaiting execution by lethal injection. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. A successful man, whose career began with a business background, suddenly fell into the abyss of crime when he plotted to harm the wife he once loved. The Dino Guglielmelli case is not only a story of family conflict, but also exposes the dark side of relationships marked by power and manipulation. When love turns to hate, the level of despair a person can endure is astonishing. This case reveals a dark aspect of the human soul that no one expected. Let's explore the dangerous developments behind the story of Dino. Millionaire Dino Guglielmelli and model Monica Olson were an attractive and extravagant couple, seemingly well-matched in personality. Their marriage lasted 9 years, but as their feelings for each other diminished, they decided to divorce. Monica Olson was born in 1981 in a small town in Canada. She came from a respectable and educated family and had aspirations of becoming a model from a young age. As a teenager, she frequently attended auditions, appeared in advertisements, and participated in fashion shows. Monica was not only photogenic, but also intelligent, holding a master's degree in international finance and speaking 7 languages. She worked diligently to succeed in the modeling industry, first moving to New York and eventually to Los Angeles to pursue acting. In the early 20s, Monica had a small role in the film Chick Where to Meet Moms. During the summer of 2003 in Los Angeles, 42-year-old millionaire Dino Guglielmelli met 20-year-old Monica. Dino was captivated by Monica's beauty and sought a serious relationship with her. Dino was born in 1961 in Washington State and grew up in a large, close-knit family with 6 siblings. He began working at a young age, helping his parents on their farm. He had a passion for music and dreamed of starting his own rock band. Eventually, he dropped out of college and moved to Los Angeles to pursue his dream of becoming a rock star. However, his music career did not bring in much money. At 20, Dino took a job as a cleaner at a waste disposal plant. Over the next 10 years, he worked his way up from cleaner to office manager and then to manager. In his spare time, Dino studied business and aimed to start his own venture. At 30, he launched a company that produced food additives and organic cosmetics. He believed that everyone wants to look young and healthy for as long as possible. His confidence in his business idea paid off. It became quite successful. At its peak, Dino's company operated 4 factories, employed around 300 people, and generated approximately $48 million in annual revenue. He enjoyed a life of luxury, owning expensive real estate and cars. Dino was previously married and had a son and a daughter, but his first marriage ended in divorce. At 42, the millionaire met Monica and fell in love with her immediately. He courted her, spoiled her, and showered her with gifts. After 6 months of dating, they went to Italy, where he proposed unexpectedly. Despite their age difference, Monica agreed to marry him. In 2004, they had a luxurious wedding in New York, and both radiated happiness. However, Dino's relatives were suspicious and thought Monica was only after his money. After the wedding, Dino and Monica moved into a beautiful mansion in Valencia, California. Their home was 650 square meters and featured 6 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a living room, and a spacious area for children. The property was over 1 hectare, complete with a swimming pool filled with seawater, a small spa, and a guest house. Initially, married life was very happy for them. They lived with Dino's older children, while he focused on his business and Monica worked as a model. In 2005, when Monica became pregnant, she paused her modeling career. They soon welcomed their daughter, Vendela, and 2 years later, their second daughter, Sienna, was born. Monica was completely immersed in motherhood, but as the years passed, she realized that family was not all she wanted to devote her life to. In 2008, with her husband's support, she launched her own line of organic cosmetics called Skin by Monica Olson. She also began to gradually return to her modeling and acting career, hiring a nanny to help care for her children in their luxurious home. By 2011, Monica's career took off. She frequently traveled to Hollywood for filming, flew to New York, and worked with top designers in Milan. Often she returned home late at night when her daughters were already asleep and left early in the morning for filming again. During this time, Monica's cosmetics line became very popular, and 2 major retail chains agreed to feature her products in their stores. Monica's friend admitted that she wanted to become more financially independent and not depend on her millionaire husband, Dino. However, Dino noticed Monica's rising fame and became frustrated with her frequent absences. He preferred that she stay home, raise their children, and manage the household. Dino's older brother, Gino Guglielmelli, lived with Dino and Monica for 6 months and noticed issues in their relationship. Both Dino and Monica had strong personalities and were unwilling to compromise. Dino didn't want Monica to take part in photo shoots and started to control her, which made him increasingly domineering and aggressive. Eventually, Monica, who owned the company, decided to shut it down, leading to a halt in the supply of their organic cosmetics to stores. Dino also quit his job and increasingly spent time in clubs. By the time he turned 50, he fulfilled a childhood dream by forming his own rock band as the lead vocalist. He dyed his hair black and started wearing nail polish. He told Monica that this was his way of expressing himself and that she shouldn't be afraid, but his new look frightened her. Monica confided in her friends that his behavior had become erratic. One day, Dino fired the nanny who was very much loved by his daughters. He was uncomfortable with how close the nanny was to Monica and felt she was too devoted to her. By the end of 2011, his relationship with Monica had deteriorated. The couple was constantly arguing and could no longer live together. Dino filed for divorce and moved into a guest house on his luxurious property to reduce contact with Monica while still being legally married. During this time, he began dating various women, not waiting for the official divorce. He had several mistresses and was open about his infidelities. Meanwhile, Dino also confided in his friend Rick Furman, a 40-year-old businessman and former military man with connections. Dino expressed his desire to end things with Monica as soon as possible. He and Rick, who were business partners supplying the military with vitamins and nutritional supplements, had developed a trusting friendship. Dino expressed his concerns to Rick about Monica having affairs with both men and women. He criticized her parenting, mentioning her heavy drinking and addictive use. He confided in Rick that he feared losing his assets and custody of his daughters. He was also unwilling to pay Monica the $5,000 monthly child support. He handed Rick a copy of Monica's car keys, along with details of her whereabouts. Dino requested Rick to plant addictives in Monica's car and notify the police, intending for her to be arrested and deported to Canada. Not long after, Dino submitted paperwork showing his company was financially struggling, which led to a reduction in alimony from $5,000 to $2,000 $500. He consulted a divorce lawyer, who recommended that Dino leave Monica alone. The lawyer argued that fighting would ultimately be futile, and advised Dino to just pay the alimony and focus on his own life. Frustrated, he remained unwilling to accept losing to Monica. He did not want to give her his daughters, and he did not want to share his business with her. Dino repeatedly asked his friend for help in getting rid of Monica. One day he met Rick and told him that he had infected Monica with HIV, claiming that she was now seriously ill and would soon die of AIDS. This news made Rick smile, and Dino felt happy, believing that this punishment was enough for Monica. However, in early 2012, the situation changed. In January, Dino and Monica had another argument at their mansion, which their daughters witnessed. During the fight, Monica became frightened, took the girls to her room, and locked the door. Unsure of what to do, she called the police for help. However, Dino had already called 911 first, claiming he had been hit in the face and showing the police a photo of small scratches on his neck. The police sided with Dino and arrested Monica, taking her to the police station. She spent a day in a cell with dangerous criminals. Soon, a case of misdemeanor and domestic violence was opened. Later that month, Dino obtained a restraining order against Monica, forcing her to move out of their mansion. Dino's ex-wife, Latia Devine, revealed that during their divorce, Dino accused her of domestic violence and falsely claimed she used illegal addictives. Dino was determined to keep custody of their children and succeeded in doing so. After the divorce, Latia lost custody of the children, the family home, and their joint business that produced food additives and cosmetics. Latia described Dino as calculating, mean, and heartless, believing he had slandered both her and Monica for his own gain. Unlike Latia, Monica decided to fight back. After 13 months, she proved her innocence, was cleared of all domestic violence charges, and was allowed to reunite with her daughters. In a fit of rage, Dino contacted Rick, asking him to make Monica disappear from his life forever. Dino frequently reminded Rick, calling him 5 to 10 times a week, that he needed to eliminate Monica quickly. He wanted it to appear as though she had died due to addictive-related violence. He wished for her death to be painful and brutal, even envisioning her head being severed and her body discarded in a ditch. On October 1, 2013, Dino and Rick met for lunch at a cafe. At that time, Dino knew Monica was on vacation in Mexico. During their meal, Rick informed Dino that he had hired someone in Mexico and that Monica would be dead within a few hours. When Rick questioned how the daughters would cope without their mother, Dino dismissed Rick's concerns, insisting he was a good father and would find them a new caring mother, someone much better than Monica. The friends then talked about payment. Dino promised to pay Rick $80,000 for a planned crime. He wanted to see Monica's murder reported in the newspapers. Their meeting lasted about an hour and a half, but only 15 minutes were spent discussing the crime. After the meeting, Rick said goodbye to Dino and went home. However, Rick knew that Dino would never read about Monica's death in the newspapers because he had already contacted the police. Their entire conversation in the cafe was recorded on a dictaphone that Rick had hidden under the table. Additionally, there were undercover police officers at other tables in the cafe watching them closely. Monica was thankful to Rick for not killing her. She had been hiding in a hotel in California, waiting for Dino to be arrested. On October 52, 2015, Dino was arrested at his luxurious mansion in Valencia, in front of his daughters. He was charged with attempted murder. Dino denied the charges, claiming that Rick had set him up to take over his business. He accused Rick of wanting to kill Monica so she wouldn't interfere with their business dealings, stating that Rick often complained about Monica trying to terminate their contracts with the military. While Dino was in prison, he offered a cellmate money to meet Rick. When Rick learned of this, he became scared and decided to leave California and hide, Prosecutors also discovered that Dino had secretly transferred $4.5 million abroad and was planning to escape the country with his children, but his plans fell through. As a result, he was moved to solitary confinement and prohibited from using a mobile phone. Regarding Rick Furman, the authorities was revealed during the investigation that he had served only 1 year in the Army and had a troubled military career. He was wounded and subsequently demobilized. There were some unusual aspects related to Rick in the case. For instance, the authorities was found that Rick had deceived Dino multiple times by claiming they had signed a military contract for food supplement supplies. Rick admitted to forging a signature to convince Dino that a significant commercial deal was forthcoming, hoping to distract him from negative thoughts and lift his spirits. Fortunately for Monica, Rick did not harm her. He tricked Dino into believing that this would make Dino leave Monica alone and calm down. Prosecutors thought that Dino and Rick were a bad match. They had done business together and had been friends for a long time. The judge described Rick as a chameleon. Although there were suspicions that Rick was a fraud, he was not charged with any crimes. When Dino's trial began, he continued to deny his guilt, claiming he was the victim in this situation. According to Dino, his only mistake was working too hard and trusting his friend, who turned out to be a traitor. The judge offered Dino a plea deal. Facing the possibility of life in prison, he could significantly shorten his sentence by accepting responsibility. Dino agreed and pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree murder, explaining that he could not refuse the deal because of his mother's request. In 2014, Dino Guglielmelli was convicted and received a 9-year prison sentence. Monica was dissatisfied with this outcome, stating that her life was worth more. During the court proceedings, she expressed, "The mere intent to kill is already a crime. What if I try to shoot someone but miss by half an inch? Am I still a criminal, or does the missed shot make me less guilty? Did Dino become less of a criminal because Rick intervened?" After the verdict, Monica officially divorced Dino. She realized that her primary focus now was raising their daughters, Vendela and Sienna. Following their divorce, Monica inherited a mansion in Valencia from Dino. However, she felt unsafe living in such luxury and was anxious about every little noise. Consequently, she sold the property for $3 million and purchased a more modest home for herself and her daughters. Monica attempted to restart her cosmetics business, but it was not successful. She feels that without the turmoil caused by Dino, she could have achieved a brilliant career and true success. Dino's company, Creations Garden, was sold at auction, and the proceeds were used to pay off debts. Dino served his prison sentence in California and was released in 2021. The end of the Dino Guglielmelli case is a cautionary tale of the dire consequences of ambition and immorality. A successful businessman with a multi-million-dollar company, he ended up in trouble with the law when he tried to resolve personal conflicts with violence. This story not only highlights the importance of the law in protecting people from dangerous schemes, but also reminds us that greed and selfishness can lead to the downfall of any success, no matter how great. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Josh and Ashbrook. The story we are about to explore takes place in Newport Richey, Florida, a typical American suburb with a population of around 15,000. Located near Tampa, this area is known for its beautiful beaches and is generally a peaceful place with a low crime rate. Residents typically feel safe, and when crimes do occur, they are usually minor and not violent. However, the events of 2002 shocked the entire community. In the 20 Ruse, the Ashbrook family lived in Newport Richey. The family included Tara, Robert, and their 2 daughters. The eldest daughter, Joshan, was born on February 21, 1986, in Kokomo, Indiana, where her parents were living at the time. Due to job challenges, the family decided to move to Newport Richey to improve their financial situation. At that time, Joshin had just started walking, and her younger sister had just been born. Tara and Robert found jobs and their relationship was strong. They wanted to provide everything their daughters needed and help them discover their talents. They noticed Joshin had a passion for music and dance, so Robert encouraged her to pursue these interests. As a result, Joshin began taking music classes and taking voice lessons. Joshin shared this passion with her younger sister, who happily followed her lead. What started as a simple hobby soon became a focused pursuit, and Joshin became increasingly dedicated to honing her talent. Her parents recognized her enthusiasm and began taking her to events and competitions to help her mature. Joshin believed that becoming a singer would not only bring her joy, but also provide a good income in the future. Joshin became deeply engaged in her music, leading people to think she was genuinely preparing for a professional career. Her talent made her well known in her town, further boosting her reputation. She began to regularly perform at various events, which became her signature. Even in elementary school, she started writing poetry and song lyrics, making friends with others who shared her passion for music. During her school years, she recorded several demo songs of her own creation by visiting a music studio on her own, using her savings instead of asking her parents for financial support. She started reaching out to various music and radio organizations to promote her compositions, hoping to attract the attention of a producer. It was challenging to succeed in this field, but she was determined to pursue her dream of a music career. However, if that didn't work out, she had no intention of giving up. She is also interested in law and plans to attend university alongside her musical ambitions. By 2002, when Joshin turned 16, she entered a rebellious phase typical of many teenagers. She spent increasing amounts of time focused on her vocal training, writing songs, visiting recording studios, and hanging out with friends. This shift in priorities began to negatively impact her academic performance, causing her grades to slip. Additionally, she started attending parties with older peers, and her new friends were not the kind her parents approved of. During this time, she also began to experiment with alcohol. Meanwhile, her relatives noticed that she wasn't achieving significant success in music, leading them to urge her to consider a backup plan and focus on her education instead. Tara and Robert were concerned about their daughter's behavior. They often pressured Joshin to succeed in school, continue her education, and pursue music as a hobby. Her parents worried that if she didn't graduate, she wouldn't be able to get into college, which they believed would hinder her chances of achieving musical success. Their efforts to help Joshin deal with her teenage challenges often resulted in arguments and misunderstandings. After one such incident, Joshin ran away from home, and this soon became a regular occurrence. Her parents tried to control their teenage daughter by keeping her at home, but their efforts failed. Joshin often ran away at night, only to return in the morning. Initially, this behavior upset her parents even more, but over time, Tara and Robert realized that pressuring her wasn't working. They decided to ease their control temporarily, so their daughter could settle down. Although she still ran away frequently, her parents became less anxious. On July 30, 2002, Joshin went for a walk with friends, leaving home late in the evening. She returned around 2:00 a.m. after attending a party. When she returned home, her parents woke up and immediately noticed the smell of alcohol and marijuana on her. This angered her mother, Tara, who lost her temper and accused her daughter of being disobedient and behaving inappropriately. Tara insisted that her daughter cut off her friends, whom she considered a bad influence. Meanwhile, her father, Robert, chose to stay out of the argument. He had witnessed similar confrontations many times before. He did not want to resort to violence and damage his relationship with Joshin. So Robert let his wife resolve the conflict herself. However, they could not control Joshin's behavior. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. After calming down, Tara went to bed, hoping that they would resolve their differences by the next morning. When Tara and Robert woke up in the morning, they noticed that Joshin had not returned. They began to worry. Tara remembered the phone numbers of all the friends Joshin might have slept with, but when they called, there was no sign of her at any of them. Her parents then decided to check other places Joshin might have been. Unfortunately, they could not find her or any clues as to where she might be. As night fell, the Tara became increasingly panicked, and the Robert made the decision to report her missing at the nearest sheriff's office. However, Joshin was well known to the local police due to previous incidents of running away, so her parents' report didn't receive much attention at first. The police tried to reassure them and suggested they go home to wait for their daughter to come back. The parents reported a recent argument to the police, saying that their daughter had not returned home that morning, which was unusual for her. None of her friends knew of her whereabouts. This situation seemed different from Joshin's previous elopements, but the police remained skeptical. They assumed that teenage girls often needed time to calm down after an argument and believed that she would return soon. However, her parents also realized that they would have to wait at least a day after Joshin went missing before filing a report. So Tara and Robert returned home, hoping that they would find Joshin there. Unfortunately, she had not returned. Her parents couldn't wait any longer. They didn't waste any time. Her family searched for Joshin all over the city, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The next morning, when the electrician was on his way to work, he passed by a familiar stretch of road. Then he saw something suspicious on the side of the road. When he got closer, he realized it was a body. This scared him, and he quickly called the police. When the police arrived, they confirmed that the body belonged to a girl between the ages of 16 and 18. They quickly decided to investigate recent missing persons reports, which led them to believe that the victim was Joshin. Unfortunately, the photo provided by her parents was not very helpful, as her face was disfigured. The police chose not to rush to call in relatives to identify the body, wanting to avoid causing them distress. The body had many injuries and a deep cut on the neck. The body was sent to a forensic expert for an autopsy. Police initially believed the attack was abuse because her clothes were torn. However, the medical examiner found no signs of abuse. Surprisingly, the cause of death was a shallow cut to the neck, but the cut was made after her death. She had a broken collarbone and extensive bruising to her upper chest. The injuries to her arms and torso suggested that she had been able to fight off her attacker for a long time before she was killed. Forensic experts discovered valuables, skin cells, and some hair under her fingernails, all of which belonged to the suspect. A thorough analysis of the evidence collected from the body suggested that the girl had not been murdered in the alley. She may have been moved there and dumped to throw the investigation off track. Tire tracks were found in the nearby wooded area, likely dating from around the time the body was moved. After experts confirmed that the body was Joshin's, her family was informed of the tragic news. They came to identify the body, which was a heartbreaking moment for them. During her initial conversation with the police, Tara suggested checking on their neighbor, John Hansen. She recalled that he had been accused of molesting schoolgirls, but Tara was unable to provide any specific details. When police arrived at the address, they found only John's wife. She told police that he had moved away a few months before the incident. He lived out of town and the couple was planning to divorce. According to her, he was out of town at the time of the attack, so he could not have been involved. Police also investigated John and found no history of violence or any criminal record. Contrary to what Tara had said, he was ruled out as a suspect, and police turned their attention to analyzing the evidence they had collected. The tire tread patterns were particularly noteworthy. along with skin particles and hair believed to belong to the potential perpetrator. A thorough analysis of the tire prints revealed that a similar pattern matched 7 different tire brands. This information helped police significantly narrow down their search area. They also determined, based on the depth of the tire tracks, that the vehicle was not a passenger car or a truck, but possibly a pickup truck. On July 31, police received a call from a woman reporting that she had seen Joshan that morning. This information helped establish a timeline. The witness mentioned that a girl who introduced herself as Joshan had called early in the morning and wanted to speak to her son, but the young man was out of town at the time. Joshan asked if she could leave him a letter. The mother agreed to deliver the letter. Joshan did indeed come to her home around 9 a.m. and gave her son an envelope. According to the witness, when Joshan arrived, she got out of a red pickup truck. The driver was a man in his 40s with short hair. During the exchange of envelopes, the witness did not notice anything suspicious, except that Joshan seemed to be in a hurry. She could not see the driver's face clearly and could only provide a rough description. The witness remembered not only the letter, but also the phone number Joshan called. There was no evidence or anything unusual in the letter. It simply stated that Joshan wanted to break up with the guy. When police called the number provided by the witness, a man named Philip Thompson answered. He explained that on July 31, he was driving home early in the morning with his daughter when he encountered a hitchhiker on the road. He decided to give her a ride. The hitchhiker was Joshan, who had asked to use his cell phone to call an unknown woman. She then asked for a ride home to deliver an envelope to a friend, and Philip agreed to help her. They stopped at a supermarket, but after Joshan got out and walked in an unknown direction, police asked Philip to come to the station to give a formal statement. He agreed but never showed up, either that evening or the next day. The police viewed this situation as alarming. They attempted to call Philip again, but could not reach him. This raised further suspicion about him. The police officers then investigated his officially registered phone number. They discovered that Philip was a criminal with a record of several misdemeanors and a murder conviction. He had previously been charged with the murder of math teacher Gary Thorne, who was found dead in his home. During a search of his home, police found items stolen from Gary's home, linking him to the brutal murder. Although Philip never confessed, he was sentenced to many years in prison. His lawyers continued to work to get him released, and due to several errors by the judge, they were able to have the case reviewed. After a retrial, his sentence was reduced to 6 years and he was released early. After being released, the Philip found work as a laborer on a construction site, where he met a woman named Marta, who was a foreman. Marta was a single mother raising a daughter, and together they later had a daughter named Patricia. Over time, their relationship deteriorated for unspecified reasons, leading to a divorce and a custody battle over Patricia. In 2002, Philip unexpectedly gained custody of his daughter, despite his troubled criminal record. He continued to live with her, but he was implicated in a murder case when Joshan was found dead, and he was reportedly the last person to see her alive. Police tried to contact Philip, but he never picked up his phone. They then decided to investigate the supermarket that Philip claimed he visited with Joshan. Police obtained the store's surveillance camera footage and analyzed it. They discovered that Philip and Joshan had indeed been to the supermarket on July 31, the day of the disappearance. Philip was seen parking at the mall with Joshan and his daughter Patricia. After shopping, they left and Joshan gave a letter to her boyfriend's mother. Unfortunately, at the time, there were few surveillance cameras on the streets, making it difficult to track Philip's movements. Philip was wanted, and his case attracted considerable media attention across the United States. There were many clues from witnesses. Among them, some useful information emerged that helped locate Philip. When his friend contacted the police, he had been living with Philip and his daughter for several months. He gave Philip's address, which led the police to his last known address, where they found crucial evidence. During a search of the apartment, they discovered a small nightstand with bleach stains and small blood stains that were later confirmed to be those of the murdered Joshin. Additionally, a red pickup truck was registered to Philip. From that point on, the police began treating him as a fugitive killer. Police spoke with Philip's daughter Patricia, who recalled a recent trip with her father. During the nighttime ride home, she fell asleep in the car. She woke up to find her father stopping the car and letting a strange girl in, who introduced herself as Joshin. Joshin shared that she ran away from home and asked for a ride. She was looking forward to going to Los Angeles to showcase her songs and become a famous singer. After a while, Joshin asked to use the phone, and they stopped several times at a store and a house. They eventually came to a river, where they swam and fished. Then Patricia fell asleep. When Patricia woke up, she found Joshin was no longer in the car. When she asked her father where the strange girl had gone, he did not answer. For months, police had no idea where Philip was. He seemed to have disappeared completely. He didn't make any phone calls or pay any bills. He kept himself so well hidden that police began to wonder if he was still in the country. Then, almost a year later, during a check on a suspicious car, a patrol officer discovered a clue about Philip. It turned out that the person in the car was a friend of Philip's. He said that during this time, Philip had been living with a friend and was not officially registered, which helped him evade detection. Philip was eventually found and arrested on October 28, 2013, with police collecting a hair sample from him and comparing it to samples found under Joshin's fingernails, which showed a match. Philip's pickup truck tires also matched the prints found at the crime scene. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Philip, he refused to talk to police and would not confess to his guilt. During the trial, the prosecutor's office presented a timeline of events to the jury. After leaving home, Joshin got into a car driven by Philip, who was accompanied by a young woman named Patricia, who made Joshin feel safe. He drove Joshin to a store and helped deliver mail, acting in a way that made her trust him. However, when his daughter Patricia fell asleep, Philip took the opportunity to attack her, possibly with the intent to rape her. Joshin fought back, stopping the attack, which enraged Philip. In his rage, he killed her and then returned to his apartment. After Patricia woke up, Philip took her to her mother and then returned to dispose of the body and clean up the scene. During the trial, many were shocked by Philip's behavior. Joshin's mother, Tara, accidentally glanced at Philip, who immediately responded with a wink and a smile, showing no remorse for his actions. Although he pleaded not guilty, the evidence against him was strong enough for a jury to find Philip Thompson guilty of first-degree murder. On December 1, 2008, he was sentenced to death, as the death penalty is practiced in Florida. His verdict was later challenged with the support of his attorney. In 2024, Philip's death sentence was commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Anna Maria Wilson. In May 2022, the cycling community was shocked by the shocking murder of rising star Anna. This is the result of jealousy, betrayal, and obsession. At the heart of the case was a volatile love triangle, her affair with Colin Strickland and his girlfriend, Caitlin Armstrong. What really happened that night in Austin, Texas, and what drove Anna to her tragic end? The case remains a chilling exploration of human emotions and how they can lead to acts of cruelty. From Anna's tragedy to the dramatic international manhunt, the case not only left a lasting impression, but also raised urgent questions about trust and justice. Anna Maria Wilson was born on May 18, 1996 in Little Tony, New Hampshire. Her mother, Karen Wilson, was a cycling instructor, and her father, Eric Wilson, was a member of the U.S. ski team in 1977. With such parents, She was destined to make a career as an athlete. The family moved to Kirby, Vermont, a picturesque area with large mountains, ski resorts, and first-class preparatory schools specializing in training young athletes. Her father worked as a ski racing instructor at Burke Mountain Academy. At a young age, both Anna and her brother Matthew Wilson attended college where their father worked. Both were already experienced skiers, much to the delight of their parents, especially Anna. She seemed to have inherited the sporting genes passed on to her by her parents. She was not only a talented skier but also captain of football team and a promising gravel racer. This was her passion lay. For a short period of time, she not only participated in competitions, but also won races with amazing speed. Unfortunately, her bright future was destined to be cut short. On May 11, 2022, at about 10:00 p.m. in Austin, Texas, during a friend's 25th birthday celebration, Anna was found bleeding from her head, unconscious, and not breathing in the bathroom. It was not a freak accident, nor an attempt to take herself harm. She had been attacked twice in the head and once in the chest. In complete shock, her friend immediately called 911, trying to save Anna's life. First responders arrived on the scene as quickly as they could and immediately began performing CPR. But it wasn't long before they gave up. It was too late. Anna's fight for life was over. But what happened? What drove the attacker to so brutally take her life? Let's go back in time. In 2019, Anna graduated from Dortmund University with a degree in engineering. However, she wasn't planning on making a career as an engineer. She dreamed with all her heart of proving herself in sports. Within 2 years, she became a famous cyclist, rising up the rankings and sharing podiums with already established professional cyclists. She used to work in a company, but she soon quit to devote herself to cycling. Her career path consisted solely of training and competing. Anna became more famous and began to integrate more into the community of athletes and cyclists. She had many friends and new sponsors. One such person was Colin Strickland, 30-year-old experienced cyclist. He had a common sponsor with Anna. In October 2021, Anna visited Austin, Texas, where Colin lived. Soon as they came out of their previous relationships, Colin and Anna entered into a short-lived relationship. After, Anna returned to her home in California. Meanwhile, Colin got back together with Caitlin Armstrong, with whom he had previously dated. Caitlin, a 34-year-old yoga instructor and realtor. There was no animosity between Anna and Colin after their breakup. They remained friends and active members of the cycling community. However, a problem arose. Caitlin did not like Colin's continued communication with Anna. Although she was unaware of their previous involvement, Caitlin could not understand that their relationship was strictly platonic and professional. She began to take steps to prevent them from communicating with each other, blocking calls and deleting messages from Anna on Colin's phone. Colin did not want to part with Caitlin, fearing he would lose her. In an effort to ease the situation and in a strange way, calm Caitlin down, he saved Anna's number in his phone under a different name. Perhaps he couldn't think of anything else, but it wasn't the smartest move on Colin's part. In January 2022, Anna and Colin took part in a cycling competition in Arkansas, and Caitlin accompanied them. This led to an awkward situation. Anna seemed unaware of the issues her friendship with Colin was causing. Although there was no overt conflict, the atmosphere was tense. The day after the event, Anna texted Colin asking what was happening between them. She mentioned that if Colin preferred to stay just friends, she was okay with that, but they needed to discuss it. From Anna's message, it appeared she was uncertain about their relationship, at least from her end. Things became even more complicated when Caitlin learned that Anna and Colin had a romantic history. Caitlin's friends said that she was extremely angry, with some saying she even threatened Anna, claiming would kill Anna. While such statements can be exaggerated in emotional moments and may not indicate actual intent, Caitlin felt her concerns were valid. Colin communicated with Anna during training, spent a lot of time with her at cycling competitions, and talked with her frequently. Since Caitlin was aware of their past relationship, she changed how she viewed the situation. To her, it seemed clear that Colin was cheating on her. This suspicion is further reinforced when she discovers that Colin has been hiding his messages with Anna under a fake name on his phone. Although Caitlin could have reacted impulsively, but she remained composed and took months to process everything. On May 10th, Anna returned to Austin for a bike ride called Gravel Locomotives and then stayed with a friend. Colin was also on the trip. He planned to go swimming with Anna on May 11th at 5:30 p.m. He misled Caitlin about his plans that evening. He picked up Anna from her friend's house, and they went swimming in a deep pool with a whirlpool as planned. After swimming, Colin and Anna had dinner at a poolside restaurant. He then dropped Anna off at her friend's house at 8:37 p.m. Colin sent Caitlin a text saying he had been asked to deliver flowers to a friend's house and was on his way home. He didn't wait for Anna to get home safely, assuming she would be fine. Just as Colin texted Caitlin, Anna's friend's doorbell rang, confirming her arrival. Of course, Caitlin didn't believe Colin's explanation about flower delivery. Curious about what Colin was really up to, Caitlin used a special app on her phone to track his location. She also found out where Anna was using the same app. This program is typically used for planning exercise routes, which can be shared and compared with other users. Additionally, it allows real-time tracking of someone's location, such as during a run or bike ride, or even to check on a partner suspected of cheating. At 8:37 p.m. that evening, Anna arrived at her friend's house to attend birthday. Around 10:00 p.m., her friend called 911 after finding Anna seriously injured from a brutal attack. The police immediately investigated this murder. Complicating the situation, the victim was from out of town. The police's first priority was to identify anyone in the area who knew Anna, and they quickly found leads. They asked Anna's friend if anything had been stolen, but there were no obvious signs of a burglary. The only notable thing missing was Anna's bicycle, which the police later discovered abandoned in some bushes nearby. The bike is quite valuable to a professional cyclist. However, if it was a burglary, why didn't the thief take the bicycle with him since nothing else was missing from the house? The police quickly concluded that the incident was not a failed burglary. Instead, it appears that the perpetrator had a personal grudge against the victim. Anna's friend, who had called 911, she was devastated by Anna's death, showed no signs of involvement, so the police ruled her out as a suspect. The investigation then turned to Anna's acquaintances in the area, specifically Colin and Caitlin. The police found out that Caitlin had a Class B warrant for her arrest. While this warrant was not for a serious crime, it was related to fraud. Known, Caitlin had previously gone to a Botox clinic and, when it was time to pay, told the staff that her credit card was in her car. She left to get her credit card back, but never returned. The fraud was minor, totaling only $600, but it provided the police with a reason to bring Caitlin in for questioning about Anna's murder. Officer Wilson immediately believed that it was time for Caitlin to pay for her actions. She did not deny her wrongdoing, as she likely faced only a minor penalty, such as an apology and a fine. Caitlin's behavior changed dramatically when the police first asked her about her activities over the last 24 hours, and then inquired about Anna. When the mention of murder came up, her expression fell, and she sat frozen, clearly confused and unsure of how to respond. Despite her confusion, Caitlin attempted to explain her whereabouts, but her story was unconvincing. The investigator was noted that Anna's friend had a doorbell camera and security cameras around her house. One camera focuses on the front of the house, capturing part of the sidewalk and alley, with the view of passing cars and people. This footage became crucial. It showed a black Jeep Grand Cherokee passing the house on May 11th, the same night Anna was killed. Caitlin was the one driving that vehicle. The police asked Caitlin to explain why she was in the area, but she couldn't provide a reason. She sat quietly, looking upset, with her arms crossed, avoiding eye contact and rolling her eyes. Meanwhile, the police were speaking with Colin, who shared the entire story about his friendship with Anna and the complications that arose with Caitlin. The detectives described the situation as a love triangle involving Colin, Caitlin, and Anna. She had no alibi, but on the other hand, the police had made an administrative error in the arrest warrant, and what was worse, the police database had her date of birth incorrect. Because of this mistake, Caitlin was released. After leaving the police station, Caitlin quickly took action. She didn't want to wait for the police to show up at her door again, which she was sure would happen pretty soon. Caitlin booked a flight from Chile to New York, deleted all her social media accounts, and vanished. If someone wants to disappear, the vast and varied landscapes of the United States are ideal for that. New York, with its massive urban environment, offers the perfect cover. Any police search in such a large city would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. On May 14 at 12:30, Caitlin was seen on surveillance camera entering Austin International Airport. From there, she took a connecting flight to Houston and then transferred to another flight to LaGuardia Airport in New York. On May 17th, U.S. Marshals obtained a warrant for Caitlin Armstrong's arrest, which they had previously failed to execute. Very soon after that, on May 18th, she was spotted at LaGuardia Airport. However, Caitlin was using smaller, shorter domestic flights to evade law enforcement, successfully staying one step ahead of the police. On the day she arrived in New York, she obtained an ID under the name Christine Armstrong, which was her sister's name. At the time, not much was known about this sister. The authorities was believed that Christine did not live in New York, but was, in fact, in California. Getting an ID was a risky decision for Caitlin. The authorities now knew she was in New York, and the ID was linked to a relative with the same her last name. It was highly unlikely that her sister, who supposedly lived in California, would suddenly move to New York at the same time Caitlin was on the run. The police eventually obtained a copy of the ID issued to Caitlin, which listed her address as Camp Haven, a recreational area in Livingston Estate, New York. It has been 6 weeks since the search began, but there have been no leads. Colin also went into hiding, fearing that after he spoke out, Caitlin would return and harm him. Caitlin's sister, Tina Armstrong, also sought refuge. She avoided the media and never commented publicly about Caitlin. At this moment, Caitlin continued to evade contact with authorities, and the theory that she might be hiding at Camp Haven was eliminated. After many efforts, on June 29, 2022, U.S. federal agents and Costa Rican police surrounded the Santa Teresa nursing home. A joint task force entered the facility and quickly emerged with a woman dressed in black, her nose bandaged. She did not look at all like the pretty Caitlin who had long, lush red hair and bright eyes, but it was Caitlin. Authorities finally captured her. They discovered that Caitlin had left the U.S. via New York Airport on May 18 at 8:00 p.m. using a fake passport. She had never been to Camp Haven. Instead, her strategy involved taking different flights to mislead the police, which worked perfectly. While the police searched New York, she arrived in San Jose, Costa Rica. Since Caitlin's arrest, many rumors and theories have emerged. A significant question is whether she acted alone or had accomplices. She led a comfortable life as a yoga instructor and realtor, but she was not wealthy. In under 50 days, she managed to book and pay for multiple flights within the U.S. and an international flight to Costa Rica. The bruises and bandages on her face indicate she likely underwent plastic surgery soon after arriving in Costa Rica. And this is expensive. Eventually, police discovered her black Jeep at a local car dealership. On May 13, Caitlin sold the car for $12,200. This partly explains why she is able to cover her expenses. However, $12,200 is not a substantial amount when trying to stay hidden, and it's doubtful it covered all her travel costs, living expenses, and surgery. Suspicion has shifted to her sister Christine. It's important to note that this is just a theory and not confirmed, as there is no definitive evidence about anyone's involvement, including that of her sister. The day after Caitlin arrived in New York, she obtained an ID using Christine's name. And when she was arrested, she had a copy of Christine's driver's license with her. Meanwhile, the day after Caitlin's arrival, Christine applied for a new driver's license, claiming hers was lost. Did she assist Caitlin in evading the authorities? There is no answer to this question yet. Another possibility is that Colin may have played a significant role in the case. Some people suspect a conspiracy involving Colin and Caitlin. They believe that Colin's text to Caitlin, sent just after he dropped Anna off at her friend's house, claiming he was delivering flowers, was actually a secret message about Anna's location. There is no evidence to support this theory. It remains speculation. Nonetheless, Colin has a questionable history of honesty. He concealed his relationship with Anna and changed her name in his phone to prevent Caitlin from discovering the truth. He also told the police that he and Caitlin had broken up before Anna arrived in town, and that Caitlin was fine with him dating others. If that was the case, why did he text Caitlin about his whereabouts, and why was she upset about Anna and Colin's friendship? Since Caitlin's arrest, police have been working hard to gather evidence. One key piece is ballistic evidence linked to a 9mm weapon that was purchased by Colin, not Caitlin. A man gave this weapon to her in January 2022, and investigators found it in her home. Detectives are also looking into the possibility that someone from another country helped Caitlin. After her deportation, law enforcement held a press conference discussing how quickly she managed to escape and catch multiple flights between airports. Additionally, she possessed a passport that did not belong to her. On July 21, 2022, Caitlin participated in her first online trial, where she pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. In October 2022, she attended a second hearing to determine if she could be released while waiting for a jury trial. Various options were discussed, but Caitlin remained confident that she would confront a grand jury regarding the murder charges, insisting on her innocence. She will stay in the Travis County Jail until her trial. According to her lawyer, prosecutors are hesitant to take the case to trial, citing a lack of evidence for a conviction. The defense argues that the officers involved were inexperienced and did not properly act on information about Caitlin's ex-boyfriend. They also pointed out that Caitlin's and Colin's home was vandalized the night Anna was killed, questioning why this was not investigated thoroughly and who may have been responsible for the crime. The defense is arguing that the police were incompetent in their investigation. They believe law enforcement is trying to cover up mistakes and misconduct related to the case. The court hearing was scheduled for a week after the bail hearing, but the defense has since filed a motion to suppress evidence obtained by police, claiming that Caitlin was not read her rights. They argue that this invalidates the evidence, including her initial arrest tied to a Botox clinic. As a result, the judge has paused the trial while considering these motions, and a new pretrial date is set for June 22, 2023, although it has not yet been fully confirmed. A few months later, Caitlin Armstrong was sentenced to 90 years in prison for the murder of Anna Maria Wilson. The sentence was handed down on November 17, 2023, after she was convicted by a Texas jury the day before. Caitlin was convicted of attacking Anna 3 times in May 2022, motivated by jealousy over Anna's previous relationship with her boyfriend Colin. Anna, a rising star in the professional cycling scene, was shot and killed in Austin, Texas. Investigation reveals disturbing links between Caitlin Armstrong, Cloyne, and Anna. Caitlin's jealousy led her to commit murder. Her trial ended in November 2023, resulting in a guilty verdict and a 90-year prison sentence. Although the case has been closed, the details surrounding Anna's death continue to cause debate. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Cher Lynn Hughes. Cher Hughes is a businesswoman in her 50s. Her husband, Keith Worrell, is 3 years younger than her. They are both from Florida and quickly fell in love with the tropical Bocas del Toro. They decided to move to Panama to start a new life. After living there for 6 months, they purchased a plot of land and built a small hotel called Casa del Sapa, which they both directly managed. Thanks to Cher and Keith's business acumen, they developed the hotel into a success. But they didn't stop there. Using her savings, Cher gradually acquired 4 additional properties to expand her business. One day, she excitedly told Keith that she had purchased an entire island. She loved the area so much that she couldn't help herself. She wanted to keep buying more properties and make it her permanent home. Together, they created their dream haven. Cher and Keith appeared deeply connected and were often referred to as Ken and Barbie for their harmonious relationship. It seemed they had a bright and happy future ahead of them. Sadly, Cher's fate was tragic. Although she was unable to have children, she always longed to be a mother. For years, she underwent treatments and tried tirelessly to conceive, but her efforts were unsuccessful. However, she fulfilled her dream of becoming a mother by caring for and helping the local children on the island. She regularly bought them uniforms, school supplies, organized themed parties, boat trips, and fun events. The children loved her very much and called her Mrs. Cher. After a period of living on the island, Keith and Cher divorced. Keith began a new relationship with another woman, also an immigrant from the United States. Despite being betrayed, Cher still did not let herself fall. Determined to move forward, she mends her relationship with her sister Judy, whom she had not talked to much recently. To mark this fresh start, Cher planned a small gathering, inviting Judy and a few close friends. The intimate event was meant to help her heal, forget her husband, and found solace after their divorce. Cher had bought her sister Judy's ticket a month ago and was eager to see her again. Judy happily accepted her invitation and looked forward to the reunion. Judy missed her younger sister very much and was eager to mend their relationship. However, as Judy prepared for the trip, she abruptly stopped communicating. Over the next several days, she did not reply to messages or answer calls. Oddly, new posts appeared on her social network, but they were just recycled content from the past. This behavior seemed strange and somewhat alarming. Judy tried to find out why Cher ignored her, but all her questions went unanswered. Cher not only ignored Judy, but also all of her family and friends, who had also made repeated attempts to contact her. Growing increasingly concerned, Judy contacted Keith. However, he was cold and indifferent. He said that he was divorced from Cher. He claimed he had no idea where she was and made it clear that he had no plans to reconcile with or search for her. Cher's family thought this was unusual. They began checking her social media pages and contacting her acquaintances. Judy sent messages to nearly everyone Cher knew, explaining her disappearance, but no one had any significant information. About 10 days later, they received a message from Cher's account. In the message, Cher said she was relaxing with a man, but did not reveal his name. She also mentioned that the two were planning to go on a cruise. However, this explanation seemed confusing and out of character for Cher. Judy's worries grew stronger. Is there something fishy behind her seemingly normal divorce from Keith? His behavior had been strange, rude, and disrespectful, making Judy suspect he's hiding something. Cher's silence only makes Judy more worried. she started to fear that her sister might be in danger or even the victim of a crime. Determined to find answers, Judy contacted a friend of Cher's, Payne Thor, for help in the search. However, he wasn't able to find any useful leads. After 2 weeks of searching, he finally reported Cher's disappearance to the police. The case quickly attracted attention, thanks to Judy's frequent activity on social media. Moreover, during the 6 months she lived on the islands building her business, Cher became famous. She played an important role in the community, supporting children and people in difficulty. Hundreds of people were willing to help her family and find out the truth about her disappearance. However, the law enforcement system on the islands is very rudimentary. Despite their good intentions, the police department lacks both the resources and the capacity to investigate the case effectively. They questioned her acquaintances, but assumed that she was simply spending time with friends or that she had met a new man. When they learned that Cher was allegedly planning to go on a yacht, they accepted this theory and decided to close the case. Cher's family, who lived more than 2,000 kilometers away, were shocked and desperate. They contacted the U.S. Embassy in Panama to pressure the local police to speed up the investigation. The police received documents related to the case. Unsurprisingly, the first suspect was Cher's ex-husband Keith, who was summoned for questioning. He is ready to provide any information to exonerate himself as soon as possible. As the media covered the case, rumors began to circulate. Some accused Keith of being a cruel tyrant who mistreated Cher and was unfaithful to her. Many even suspected him of being involved in her disappearance. They had first met in Florida in 1993, when she visited Keith's bar. From the first moment, he was attracted to her, and so was she. After starting her own business, Cher set a goal to earn $1 million before moving on to new ventures, and she succeeded. Once she reached her goal, she and Keith relocated to the islands of Bocas del Toro. They loved it and decided to settle there. Their relationship grew stronger, and in 2005, they held a small wedding ceremony in the presence of close friends and family. In the timeline leading up to Cher's disappearance, detectives found it suspicious that she vanished soon after her divorce from Keith. They speculated that the two incidents might be connected and suspected that Keith knew more than he admitted. However, he has consistently denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claims they divorced amicably, despite Cher's feelings of hurt. He insisted he had no motive to harm her. As he stood to gain nothing, there was no inheritance or insurance payout involved. Their relationship had been legally dissolved. He also provided an alibi for the period of Cher's disappearance, but this was complicated by the fact that the exact time she went missing was unclear. Cher lived alone, and no one could determine precisely when she had disappeared. The investigation was further complicated by the belief among locals that Cher, a kind and well-liked person, could not have had enemies or quarrels with anyone. However, police received information from several witnesses that she had gone on a cruise with a man before her disappearance. The witnesses did not know who this man was. There was also evidence that she had sold all of her possessions to a man named Wild Bill before she disappeared. This was suspicious, as she had been waiting for her sister Judy to arrive and had no plans to leave the area. Furthermore, she did not say goodbye to anyone before she disappeared, which was very strange for someone who was so well connected and friendly with the local community. Wild Bill turned out to be a neighbor and friend of Cher. When questioned, he claimed that she had voluntarily sold her assets to him because she had fallen in love with a new man and decided to give up all her work. His explanation convinced the detectives. They verified the details and prepared to close the case. However, Cher's family does not accept this conclusion. They do not know where she is, and she has not contacted them. Unable to go to Panama themselves, the family asks the police to continue the investigation and seeks the assistance of a local journalist named Don Winner. Don Winner, a journalist for a news site for the expat community in Panama, is fluent in both English, Spanish, and is well-versed in handling complex situations on the islands. He decides to conduct an investigation to help the Hughes family seek justice. When he takes on the case, he is provided with a copy of the police report and other relevant data. During the investigation, he quickly realizes that Cher had no intention of leaving the country. This is puzzling, since a celebrity like Cher would not have disappeared without a trace. As Don continued his investigation, he discovered that Cher was not alone in Bocas del Toro's disappearance. Just 4 months earlier, a 58-year-old antique dealer named Bo Islar had also mysteriously disappeared. Cher and Bo knew each other. Although their personalities were different, she was outgoing and outgoing. He was more reserved. The important thing they had in common was that they had both sold their properties to Wild Bill shortly before they disappeared. Wild then put them up for sale. Bo's family believed he had moved to Argentina, so they did not actively search for him. However, the disappearance of both Bo and Cher raised concerns that there might be a serial killer operating on the islands, kidnapping or even murdering people. This caused panic and fear in the local community. Don continued to investigate and began to suspect that Wild was involved. After Cher's disappearance, he often hosted parties at her house, which was quite unusual. He did not even remove her picture from the wall, which gave off a creepy feeling. Furthermore, he hired someone to renovate her house and then sold it for a higher price. Don believed he was on the right track and began gathering more information about Wild Bill. Witnesses said he owned a gun, which was illegal in Panama. They said they saw him carrying it and heard bullets from time to time. This testimony gave the police a good reason to investigate. Don turned over all the information he had gathered to the police, and they found the evidence compelling. Police obtained a search warrant for Wild's home. During the search, they discovered a grisly collection of Nazi symbols, horror memorabilia, and jars of human teeth and crowns. They also found a large cache of weapons and ammunition. He was apparently obsessed with horror movies, owning a large collection of them, including videos of real-life murders on the dark web. Among the items seized was Cher's handbag, which contained her documents and several credit cards. They also found a cell phone and several personal items belonging to Bo, who had gone missing earlier. However, neither Wild nor his wife were home at the time. Investigators found Cher's dog at her house. When police tried to take the dog away, it kept returning to the house. Each time they took the dog on a boat 1 kilometer away from shore, it jumped off, swam back to shore, and ran straight home. Finally, the dog led them to a location in Wild's backyard. They assumed the dog was trying to point something out, so they decided to search the area. Meanwhile, workers who had renovated Wild's house before selling it were called in for questioning. One of them revealed that Wild had asked him to dig a hole in the backyard to bury his trash. The worker pointed out the exact location, and excavation was scheduled for the next day. During the excavation, investigators discovered the body of a woman in her 40s. Based on the condition of the remains, she had been buried for approximately 3 to 4 months. Dental records confirmed that it was the body of Cher, who had gone missing. Bo's body was also found in the same pit, but in a more advanced state of decomposition, having been buried longer. A third body was discovered nearby, but identification was difficult because the head was missing. The remains were found one after another, one skeleton after another. In total, 5 bodies were found, but the identities of 3 of them remain unknown. Investigators soon turned their attention to Wild. They uncovered that his real name was William Dathan Holbert, a 30-year-old man from North Carolina, USA. In 2007, he moved to the area with his second wife, Laura Michelle Reese. He had an extensive criminal history and was wanted in 6 states for various offenses. Neighbors described them as noisy and annoying. His wife, who introduced herself as Gina Cortez, was considered rude and odd. They rarely appeared in public except when attending parties at bars. Gina claimed to be a veterinarian, but when a neighbor sought her help with a dog, she was unable to provide assistance. She explained that her expertise was in large farm animals, like horses and cattle. This has raised doubts about the authenticity of her words. William Dathan Holbert, known as Wild, was the only child in his family. His father worked for a company that manufactured agricultural machinery. He grew up in a beautiful two-story house, was well-educated, and participated in sports regularly. He seemed to have a promising future. He married his first wife, Ryan, in 1998 at just 18 years old. Within a year, they had their first child. Over the next 4 years, they had 2 more children. During that time, he does design work, and his wife was a housewife. After his father died, Wild and his family moved back to his parents' house and took over the management of the family farm. At this time, neighbors, friends, and relatives began to notice that Wild had become extremely angry. Many believed that this could be due to his steroid use, but there were also signs that he had mental health problems. He often lost control and attacked his wife and children. His wife Ryan was very concerned about these changes, especially when Wild, for unknown reasons, wanted to kill the family's healthy and docile dog. Despite his protests, his wife took the dog to the vet, but the vet refused. In a fit of rage, he killed the dog in front of his children and dumped the body. This action shocked and saddened his family and neighbors. During this time, Wild's business ventures and his father's farm failed. Then he decided to enter politics. He bought some business suits and announced his candidacy for mayor. However, his strange and aggressive behavior caused gossip, and no one took his political ambitions seriously. Despite this, he remained confident and believed he could win. Unfortunately, an incident involving his dog further tarnished his reputation and ended any hopes of a political career. In 2003, Wild met the Hoover family at a fitness center he frequented. He made an impression as a successful businessman. Unaware of Wild's previous failed ventures, the Hoover family decided to buy a third gym in 2004 and put him in charge. This was an opportunity for him to prove his ability, but he managed it ineffectively and could not buy the necessary training equipment on time. Instead, he rented an apartment near the gym, which was only a few minutes' drive from his home. He lived there with his mistress, Laura, while maintaining the facade of a normal family life with his wife and children. By 2004, Wild's wife, Ryan, discovered that he was having an affair with Laura, which led to the breakdown of his family. Around the same time, he secretly to sell the Hoover family gym. This came to light in 2005 when he filed for bankruptcy. After leaving, he left behind tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid bills, loans, and debts. Despite having a monthly income of about $1,600, he was spending up to $4,000 each month. Later, his lover, Laura, opened a Russian-themed bookstore. However, this store also quickly failed. Wild lived in Santa Fe for a while and worked on various projects. However, he began to run into trouble when he was caught selling culturally valuable items, which turned out to be stolen. After being arrested, he escaped. He and Laura escaped from the police in an SUV. They drove through fields and down dirt roads. They eventually made it to Florida, where they boarded a cruise ship and continued their escape by getting off the ship in Panama. In Panama, they started a business selling motorcycle parts. He began using the pseudonym Ulf, despite being one of America's most wanted criminals. At the time, he was about 20 years old. Interestingly, photos of him from this period show him completely bald. On the islands, however, he grew out his hair to better conceal his identity. During this time, he actively sought advice from lawyers and experts in Panama's legal system, paying particular attention to the procedures required to purchase and register real estate. After buying their first house, they converted it into a bar named Private. There, they hosted parties and invited everyone to join them. Wild and Laura openly promoted their bar, even placing ads in the local newspaper. However, neighbors were puzzled as to how the bar was kept afloat, as it was clearly not profitable. When questioned about his source of income, he simply replied that he was a millionaire and that he worked for fun. Over time, he began buying and reselling items. Eventually, it was revealed that he was murdering people to seize their property, allowing him to amass a large sum of money and live a comfortable life. As news of Wild's dark past spread, many local residents fled their homes. Some speculated that he could escape by boat, while others thought he might flee by plane. The remote islands made it easy for him to escape, and with his wealth he could hide anywhere in the world. Forensic experts quickly determined that Cher and Beau had both been killed with a weapon to the head at close range. 3 more bodies were later identified as the Brown family, immigrants from the United States. The family included Mike Brown, his wife, and their school-age son. They had also had contact with the other victims, Cher and Beau, and were all from the same community. Mike owned the house where Wild lived and ran the bar. When the Brown family disappeared, the new owner, Wild, announced that he had bought the property from them. As with other victims, law enforcement treated the case as if the family had willingly left. The police stopped searching as soon as they heard claims that people had simply left or traveled elsewhere. It is worth noting that after Mike Brown disappeared, money was still being withdrawn from his account daily, through ATMs. This activity led the police to believe he was still alive, so they did not consider the possibility of his abduction. Over time, the investigation was dropped altogether. It was only when the case was reopened that investigators discovered the withdrawals were linked to a man named Wild and Laura, who were wanted. The police then began searching for the two. A few days later, a police boat intercepted a ship heading for Nicaragua. Among the passengers were Wild and Laura. They resisted arrest, forcing an officer to the use of a weapon to subdue them. Before their capture, they had been living in a rented house in Costa Rica. One evening, when they saw a wanted ad on TV, they packed their belongings and attempted to escape. However, someone noticed them and reported their location, leading to their detention. After being arrested, they were charged with the murder of 5 people. However, Wild refused to give up. He initially maintained his innocence, but when the evidence against him became too overwhelming, he changed his story. He suddenly claimed that Keith owed him $45. This claim was clearly untrue, as Keith barely knew him. Furthermore, there was no logical reason for him to kill Cher and the other neighbors on the island. Keith eventually decided to cooperate with the investigation, which played a key role in uncovering the truth behind the case. However, he feared that his testimony might be considered complicity. He faced the possibility of ending up in prison alongside Wild, but Wild later admitted that he had framed Keith and that Keith had nothing to do with the murders. Wild eventually confessed that he had not only killed Beau and Cher, but also the Brown family. He detailed how he had murdered them in several different locations. Thus, in the 4 years he had lived on the island, he had killed a total of 5 people. According to Wild's testimony, he invited Cher to dinner to discuss buying her property. She agreed to the meeting, but later that evening, he lured her to the backyard and attacked the back of her head from close range. He then placed her body on an ATV, drove it to a dump on his property, and hid it in a pre-dug hole. He covered the body with dirt and ordered the workers to bury it carefully, while they were completely unaware that they were assisting in a crime. He used a similar method to conceal the evidence of his other murders. His motive was simple greed. He wanted to take their property for himself and was willing to kill to achieve his goal. One day, Wilde got into a fight with another American immigrant and killed the American. He casually buried the body afterwards. He expressed regret and sorrow over his actions during a conversation. However, Laura has steadfastly denied any involvement in the crime. She claimed she knew nothing about what he had done and insisted she had no role in it. This claim was hard to believe. As a result, she was charged with complicity. 11 days after her body was found, Cher's friends and family held a funeral for her. She was buried on the island of Bocas del Toro, which she considered her paradise and her final resting place. The farewell ceremony took place on the highest point of the island, where her ashes were placed in a small hole, and a memorial tribute was set on a tree to honor her. Prosecutors asked for life sentences for both William and Laura. However, the legal process in Panama moved very slowly. Even so, the prosecutor insisted that they would not be lenient with the killers. William Dathan Holbert, also known as Wild Bill, confessed his guilt in court. He was sentenced to 47 years in a local prison, and Laura Michelle Reese was sentenced to 26 years for being an accessory, although she did not admit to helping her husband. In court, neither showed any remorse. After being imprisoned, they divorced. Despite their imprisonment, they were not too upset. In 2015, Laura remarried Sadovnikov. While serving his sentence, Wilde established a church that gained official recognition from the Panama Prison Service. He proudly called himself the advisor of this religious organization and began representing Panama in defending the rights of those serving prison sentences.